across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon to you. Thank you to Ian Collins. Back tomorrow, of course, between 1 and 4. Now, though, drive time is on. Wednesday's edition. It's really, really interesting and has been, I think, for the last 2 days to see the outpouring of anger, genuine anger from you about the grooming gang scandal. And I don't apologise for the fact that it's seemingly what people want to and need to keep talking about. You might have heard me say there to Ian. We have a talk exclusive, an exclusive to the show later on. Delighted on the one hand because I want to try and show people who perhaps are not understanding the gravity of this and how appallingly blighted so many people's lives are. Tony Sutton will be on the show. Tony shares the story of his daughter at 6 o'clock, Tessa, who was groomed, who was raped and who entered a life of drug addiction, which eventually took her own life. She was lured into drug abuse by a group of older boys starting at the age of 13. Her father claims she was exploited by a group of Asian men and boys in the community, and her life was led on a downward spiral from that point. For people who, you know, are listening to this station or reading newspapers and thinking, yeah, well, I've said it for days, right? Imagine having a kid, imagine having a daughter who has been groomed, who has been raped, who has been treated so appallingly. Tony Sutton will share that story exclusively on Drive from 6 o'clock. Don't miss it. And as for the rest of it, listen, it's a story that will not go away. Today, Labour warned, hey, this is a surprise, on the day they announced, well, they didn't, we did, 40,200 plus people, illegal migrants, have come into this country since Keir Starmer became the Prime Minister. This is the man who said, Rwanda's a waste of time. I'm cancelling on day one. I'm going to smash the gangs that run the boats that traffic these illegal migrants. This is a man who doesn't have an answer, any more, frankly, than any of the rest of them have an answer. It's interesting, isn't it? The British public would go, there is an answer. The answer is to stop making it so attractive to come here in the first place. If you lay out the red carpet to people... I saw an extraordinary video earlier. Darren Jones, number 2 at the Treasury to Richard III, Rachel Thieves, on BBC, yeah, I spit that word, Question Time, literally looking at the audience. This is a BBC audience, by the way, and saying, the thing is, most of the people that come over on these boats are women and children. We need to be considering this. No, it isn't. The Home Office, run by Labour, will admit that 83% of the people who come on boats illegally are young men who throw their passports in the sea, young men who are what, on scouting missions to find out what they can screw out of the United Kingdom. I've got a suggestion. Send the Navy into the Channel. Do not allow anybody to set foot in the United Kingdom unless they have proven paperwork that they are legal and they are going to give something back, and transport them somewhere that isn't as attractive as a 4-star hotel. Think of South Georgia or the Falkland Islands or the Orkneys or somewhere, right? Put them in a detention centre and watch the messaging start to go back to wherever they've come from, which is you don't actually get to go there anymore. You don't get a mobile phone. You don't get Pilates lesson. And what was it yesterday? Flying lessons. You don't get this. You don't get that. Actually, it's not, you know, the wonderful place that everybody's saying. It happened in America. I say this every day for a reason. I am not a cheerleader for Donald Trump. There's much about Donald Trump that frustrates me and annoys me in equal measure. But when he said, you're not coming, 380,000 people stopped coming across 3 months because suddenly it wasn't easy, it wasn't attractive. My deterrent, my argument to any Prime Minister, any government in this country is stop making it so attractive to come here. Make sure you look at what's going on with people's lives who are here. Asylum seekers today, another infantry who commit child sex crimes are a border security issue, of course. If you don't know who you're letting into your country, still upset the do-gooders, won't it? If you don't know who you're letting into your country, then how can you be sure that you're ever going to get a secure nation to live in? And this, you know, we did this earlier in the week. The ethnicity of these child sex offenders was not for years recorded. And why was that? Brendan O'Neill said it yesterday because this great... he came out with a great line yesterday, right, didn't he? Children's innocence has been sold at the altar, sacrificed at the altar of ideology. And that is exactly right. This government, many governments, thinking that, you know, if you open the borders, it'll make multiculturalism a work. It doesn't work. Sadly, it doesn't work. And I said it yesterday and I say it again. And I'm sure somebody will somewhere have a go at me for saying it. I think that if you say to people, you're going to be able to come to our country, you're going to have your backsides wiped, we're going to make sure we look after you far better than we look after our own people. And by the way, I know you're leaving because you hate your country, but when you come here, why don't you just slag off ours and try and integrate not, but just bring everything that you said didn't work for you. That's the problem. We need to stand up for ourselves. We need to say enough is enough. We'd love to hear what you think today of what's going on. Of course, we will do as we did yesterday, the latest in the Middle East. Trump says, is he poised for war? Is he playing the usual game on Truth Social? Are Iran on the edge of collapsing? We'll keep an eye on that, obviously. 0344 499 1000 is the only telephone number you need. Jodie is back, looking amazing. Harry Potter has been consigned to the dustbin of broadcasting history. 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. Start your message with the word talk. You can send a voice note to Ryan. Ryan's here. Oh, yeah. WhatsApp 0344 499 1000. But of all the stories and all the misery and all the sadness, here's how our country is on its backside, ladies and gentlemen. A simple, lovely lollipop man has been ordered to stop giving high fives to school kids. Ready for this? Because of health and safety concerns. For the past 2 years, Neil Cotton, 57, has sought to brighten the children's day as he high-fives them as they cross the road in Howden in East Yorkshire. But the school crossing patrol officer, he can't be called a lollipop man, that's racist apparently, has now been, or sexist, has now been told by the council that the gesture is a distraction to the kids and they could actually end up being run over. So in the end of the day, the world has essentially gone completely mad. So there we go. Listen, what do you make of everything that's going on in the world? Are you as cynical and as frustrated and depressed as so many of us, or are you feeling that it will get better? We'd love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. The Tories, says John in Staffordshire, had 14 years to stop the boats. They are nothing short of hypocrites. They had 14 years as well, many critics will say, to deal with the rape gangs in the north of England, and did very little. We're delighted to say a very good afternoon to Graham Stuart, a Conservative in Beverley and Holderness, and a man who is a regular on this show and freely admits that the Tories did not do what they said they were going to. Graham, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jeremy. You're on very fine form today. I'm nervous of interrupting this brilliant flow of thought.
Well, it's just, I've had a stressful morning. I'll tell you more about that in a tick. Graham, I think in all my years of broadcasting, when this speech by Cooper dropped on Monday, for me, it was beyond politics. It was beyond they said, she said, the Conservatives didn't do enough, they haven't done enough, a U-turn from Starmer who said this is a right-wing thing. As a father, and I've said this for 2 days and I'll continue to say it, as a father, it makes me sick to the stomach to think that several parts of our institution are actually prepared, or have been prepared, we can't prove this, but it seems to be the case, whether it's police or social services, local politicians, national politicians, to turn a blind eye to basically the rape of young white girls. On this, I mean, Nigel Farage in 2014 said this. Mike Graham has been talking about this for years. People I know have been called racist for daring to suggest that Asian rape gangs were afoot. Suddenly, Yvette Cooper stands up and admits that a large majority British Pakistani men, were Muslims, oh, lo and behold, illegal migrants, men, not women and children, Darren Jones, you numpty, men who come over on boats and disappear into our society. As a father, it chills me. I don't understand. And as this inquiry gets talked about more and more, Graham, I think many of us feel that the establishment will cover up for itself. What are yours? No, not the Tories. What's your thoughts as a father? I don't know. When you heard the news, have you heard about this before? What do you think of the whole situation?
Well, I am a father of 2 daughters, grown up now, but as you say, it's impossible not to be just horrified. And somehow there's something culturally wrong with this country. We moved from being worried about being too racist and too insular to something just as bad, where we were apologising for ourselves. We wouldn't stand up for ourselves. And we got to a point where it was better not to highlight, not to challenge, not to intervene on the rape of children for risk of being thought to be racist, which became the ultimate crime. Being thought to be racist was worse than the rape and ruination of the lives of young, vulnerable girls. And just saying it like that, if you saw that written down, you'd think, well, that, you know, if you put that in a fictional book, you'd never believe that would happen in the most dystopian novel. And yet it turns out it's a reality, in this country. So we must never go there again. And it doesn't mean we're going around being completely insensitive, culturally insensitive, xenophobic people. That's not us either. But we've got to have enough self-confidence, self-belief to recognise moral right and do the right thing and be prepared to stand up when others are saying, oh, you know, it's a dog whistle. I mean, I don't know. I've been an MP for 20 years. I don't know how many times I probably have been cowed. I probably have, haven't I, sometimes? I look back on this particular issue, and I'm pleased in 2009, when a senior officer came from Rotherham to my area, East Riding, I did raise it, and I made a fuss and said, have you looked into this? How can we have someone who was a very senior officer in Rotherham, who has presided over this terrible abuse, coming here as if nothing happened to the East Riding? So, but all too often, you know, we probably have self-censored, and therefore there's been a sort of cultural thing in which even I'm not saying the very bravest of us, but too many of us have probably just allowed it to happen. Now we
do you know what I thought?
Kicking and screaming to this point, and
Yeah.
it is a credit to people like Katie Lamb, who we talked about. Most of your viewers won't remember, but my young colleague who gave a brilliant speech in the House of Commons. Nigel Farage has played his part. Kemi Badenoch. I mean, it's been a great week for her pushing this because it needed to be said.
But it's still going on, Graham, and the thing the thing that I think worries our listeners and our viewers so much is whether this will be swept under the carpet, because nobody knows how high this goes, how long this has been going on for, how deep the problem is. I said this, and I make no apologies. I'm going to repeat myself all week because it matters to me so much. This week's the first week that I've been embarrassed to be British. I think it's a stain. I think it's probably one of the biggest stains on us as a society. And somebody said yesterday, can you imagine what the rest of the world is thinking? I mean, we've always had this, Britain's morally, you know, superior. Britain's this, Britain's that. Britain led the world. Britain should do this. Britain should do that. And Britain allows this to... it's beyond me to think that politicians or people in any responsible position have turned a blind eye to something that I say in my world, hopefully in a moral, decent world, is so repugnant that those people, irrespective of the colour of their skin or their religion, have no place, have no liberty, have no right to be amongst us. And I think the anger that people feeling... Paula Maybury from Brighton, the fact that the grooming of these young girls is still happening right under our noses, Jezza, is an absolute disgrace. Jezza says, Jane in London, if Starmer wanted to stop the boats, he would have done. It was a security issue long ago, and he should have had a Cobra to discuss this. He doesn't care. But the impact of those boats, and what did we're talking this year, 40,000 since he took power. I mean, it is proven by what Yvette Cooper via Baroness Casey said, that a large majority of these perpetrators are coming to our country unchecked, and no, they're not escaping war. They are criminals, they are rapists, and they are paedophiles. And you know what, Graham Stuart? If I'd said that 3 years ago, the vitriol, the language, that's now the norm. Well, not in the mainstream media, but it's the norm amongst people who know what's going on. And I genuinely, I've said it all week, I think that all politicians, Farage, Starmer, anybody, has to seriously sit down and take note that the British people are at a crossroads. They're at a crossroads because some of the things they hold dearest, things that are right and the things that are wrong, are being trampled over. And I think people are desperate to be heard. I really do.
Well, I think you're right. Look, I mean, it was, I think, 23 years ago, was it? That Anne Cryer, do you remember? She was the Labour MP, and she spoke up. She became a non-person because she dared to say this. They said it was all dog whistle, that it was inappropriate, that she should highlight the
inappropriate
component of doing it, and she was just got rid of. And now you've got this Labour government. You've got the safeguarding minister now making out that they've always been upright and done the right thing. It's like they can't see the reality. Was Jess Phillips speaking up for Anne Cryer? Did she challenge the people who tried to suppress these things? Not that I noticed.
No, she scuttled into the House of Commons the day before Easter with 45 minutes to go till you lot recessed for 3 weeks, and said, we won't be having a national inquiry, we'll be having local inquiries. I think, and I'm not going to absolve the Tories. This has been going on a long, long time. Too many people have turned a blind eye. And for me, I really hope this inquiry has depth to it, because if it doesn't, I don't think the people will accept this. And I think that if people I mean, I believe that anybody in public office that's been part of this needs to be dragged to court, tried and jailed. I genuinely mean that. And I don't care whether that's an ex-cabinet minister, politicians of all levels, local council, police or whatever. It is not right. Are you OK to take a call with me? Because I know he'd love your opinion. Let's go to London. Mark, you're on Talk Drive. Graham Stuart, MP, Conservative MP for Beverley and Holderness on the line. What you got for me, Marky?
Yeah, hello, mate. What I'd like to know is all these migrants coming into the country. My wife come out with a really good one. They want to come here, they want to change this country to their way, but they don't want to change the benefits that they're getting and that. They still want all the benefits and that. How do we know that all these people that are coming in, that we're giving everything for, are not rapists, paedophiles, murderers, and that?
Well, we now know that a number of them actually are and have been part of these grooming gangs. And the same I say to you, Mark, as I said to Graham. This sort of language 3 years ago would have been frowned upon. You can't say this, you can't say that. I'm not bothered about language. I'm bothered about 8-year-old girls, young girls being raped and their lives being stained forever, and a society either thinking it's OK to ignore that or I mean, look, let me put this to you, Graham Stuart. There's a strong belief amongst many people, which is getting stronger by the minute, that A, and 1 will be a whitewash, but B, and 2, look at Keir Starmer, right? When he stood up and he said this is far-right politics in January, irrespective of all these victims, that was nothing more, in my opinion, than to protect the Muslim vote and keep Labour MPs and councillors in power. What does that say about our Prime Minister, Graham Stuart?
Well, it does. And sadly, you know, he appears to be more interested in managing his own political coalition than he is in looking after justice. He's had to be dragged to this. He's used every name, every slur to attack everyone. And but so we will see. But we will press it. And I know Kemi Badenoch is absolutely all over the detail. She's working flat out and make sure it's got to be done right. But who can have confidence that this government won't try and gaslight us? As you said, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, one of the most senior members of the whole government, on Question Time last week on the BBC, unchallenged, said that the majority of people on the boats, he didn't say a boat he happened to see, he made up all sorts of stuff afterwards about it as well. We can all, when we're on air, it's nerve-wracking, you can make mistakes, but all you got to do is say, I got that wrong. But he didn't. He tried to suggest that most of the people were women and children, when we know it's 80% plus are young men. And we also know that they're disproportionately likely to do the exact things that the caller just said and be rapists and sex offenders. And we need to make sure that we get control. If we let people in like that, then it's not just a border crisis. It's actually an overall security crisis and a crisis for protection of our young, because you and I both said it before on this show. It's not just the past that we need to investigate. If we don't investigate that properly there, we can't have confidence that it isn't happening right now and that the same things aren't going on. And that's what's really shocking.
And I think that's the point. Listen, as ever, Graham, so appreciate you being on the show. A Tory who speaks his mind and is honest, Graham Stuart, Conservative for Beverley and Holderness, 4:20. We're live across the UK. It's just, it's one of those things. We come in here every single day and we you know, there's different stuff in the news. And I know the stuff's going on in the Middle East and there's other stuff as well. But, you know, the two stories that are dominating every single front newspaper and every single one of these sorts of shows is this grooming gang, you know, fiasco is the wrong word. Disgrace, national stain. What will that inquiry tell you? I said it before and I'll say it again. I'm delighted at 6 o'clock tonight. Delighted is the wrong word. Tony Sutton is going to be on this show. It will be incredibly emotional. This is a guy whose daughter was groomed, raped, gang raped, fell into a life of drug addiction, took her life, right? This man is utterly devastated. This man has been fighting for years against the system. This is, oh, he can't say there were Asian men because that's racist. He lost his daughter. It's not racist. So for there's people complaining, going, oh, you're being unfair, get on the phone, come on, speak to Tony Sutton. Speak to Tony Sutton and say, oh, you're being really unfair, you're being anti-this or anti-that. No, his daughter was groomed and she died because of what happened to her. She spiralled out of control. If you want to be on the show, by the way, today, 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. Loads of emails, loads of texts. We'll get to them after this break. We're back in 3.
the level of dislike of Starmer, I've never seen anything.
I haven't. No, it's absolutely vitriolic.
And it's not just ideological either.
No.
They don't like him.
No.
Whether it's his voice, his approach. I mean, up in Durham, people said to me, well, we preferred that Corbyn.
Yeah.
We didn't agree with him,
right,
but at least we knew where he stood. And it's the fact this guy doesn't stand for anything. And you see these figures, you know, after the first 300 days, he is the most unpopular Prime Minister of modern times.
He is.
By some margin.
Incredible.
And I can't see any way back.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
4:25, we're live across the UK. Thanks for tuning in to Drive Time, the home of common sense and free speech, where we're not scared to say it as it is. It starts with Mike Graham's Morning Glory. He's here just to take Rachel. I've been appalled by the things I've heard about the grooming scandal on your show, Jez, these past 2 days. What stands out to me more than anything is that it's an ongoing issue. I'd like to know what the police are going to do about this. What are the police going to do about it? It seems very little. Margaret's in Birmingham. Starmer holding a Cobra meeting this afternoon. Yes, he should call MPs in on a Saturday for the steel crisis. Why? He called them in on Saturday. Why is he not holding a crisis meeting to stop the boats? Why is he not holding a crisis meeting about children being raped? We are being invaded, and I'm not scared to use that word, and he is doing absolutely jack about that. Hello to Trish. Regarding the rape gangs, Jez, surely nurses at the NHS must have been dealing with these girls over the years regarding abortions and miscarriages. Why wasn't this reported? Absolutely. Jenny, love the show. Please make the point that these awful rape gangs have been going on for decades, not just the 14 years of Tory government. So in my reckoning, that's the previous government, Tony Blair. 15 years before the Tories. It's time Labour stopped playing party politics, took some responsibility. Yes, the Tories didn't do enough, but if any of us had anything to do with being Muslim or Pakistani, we were vilified. And today, we're still by our Prime Minister labelled as far right. Mike Graham, how are you, my old son?
Very good. Very good to see you. Thank you. Very nice.
You had Nigel Farage here this morning.
We did.
And I made the point, to me, this is so abhorrent. It's not really about politics. And I think that text does a really good job, because it says it's not just, you know, Starmer, it's not just the Tories. It goes way, way back. But Starmer's in the dock because he tried to excuse it by saying, oh, it's all far right. Again, just a really bad decision. It's like the man doesn't get politics. I loved listening to you this morning. You had Farage on, and he'd done an interview, Starmer, hadn't he, with Beth Rigby. Tell me about that.
Well, he did an interview with her where she asked him, first of all, you know, do you regret using that phrase? You know, the far-right bandwagon.
What did he say?
And he basically said, well, of course, I didn't mean it to be about the ordinary people of the country. I meant it to be about the politicians.
Right.
So he didn't say that he was sorry he said it, and he didn't shrink from saying it. And he said, I just get fed up with politicians who jump on bandwagons and just make it all about politics, which is effectively what he's doing. Because he's now jumping on the same bandwagon, whether it's far
Pressurised
right.
into jumping on it.
Doing it because he knows the government of the day has to do what the will of the people is, and the will of the people on this one is to have an inquiry. And he was wrong in the first place in January, and he was wrong in February and March and April until now, when he suddenly realised, oh my God, we better have an inquiry. Then he was asked, what's the greatest thing you've done? What's your best achievement since you've been in office since July of last year? You know what he said?
Surviving a year?
He said, well, we promised 2 million more NHS appointments, and we've brought you 3 million, which clearly is not true, because anybody who is waiting for an operation or waiting for an appointment, and the NHS knows that it's not moving, it's not working.
It's robbing Peter to pay Paul.
And then when he was asked about what was his biggest mistake since he's been in, he basically said he didn't really think he'd made any mistakes, but he perhaps could have communicated the message a bit better.
So he doesn't think that the pensions thing's a mistake, or turning down a child,
even though he's reversed it.
Or the child inquiry into raping, and he's reversed that.
Yeah, he doesn't think that was a mistake.
Right.
Apparently.
So you had Nigel on this morning, and you said to him, what did he think was, this is brilliant, by the way, Keir Starmer's biggest mistake that he's ever made? This is Nigel Farage on Morning Glory this morning.
I asked him, what was his biggest mistake?
Yeah.
Do you know what his biggest mistake was? Going into politics.
Yes.
And why do I say that? Because actually, if you go into politics, you do it because you believe in something.
Yeah.
You think there's a course of action that needs to be taken that you think will make the country better. This bloke doesn't believe in a single thing other than the niceness of human rights law, international law, and the North London set. And what you're seeing with this premiership, you're seeing somebody who wanted to be Prime Minister for the sake of being Prime Minister, not with what he could do with it.
I mean, he hits out at politicians. He says, what did he say? I don't like politicians who do nothing but spout about grooming gangs. You had a chance in January to have a national inquiry and you did nothing.
Yes, exactly right. And everybody knows that he was the head of the Crown Prosecution Service. He never stopped talking about it. He hasn't mentioned it much this week, has he?
No.
He doesn't go, oh, of course, you might remember when I was the head of the Crown Prosecution Service and I committed an awful lot of these horrible, ghastly rape gang members to prison because I cracked down on it. Well, he didn't. Yes, he did prosecute some, but the number of prosecutions went up dramatically when the next head of the Crown Prosecution Service came in. So yes, he did some of it, but he also didn't prosecute an awful lot of people because he called the witnesses unreliable. And so they didn't go through with the prosecution. So an awful lot of people, an awful lot of victims were left without any justice under Keir Starmer's reign.
And that, to me, on a human level, is one of the biggest and most heinous things about this, because this was working class girls, maybe from fractured families, maybe with some issues, socially,
some
mentally.
of them in care.
Some of them from care with no support network at all, who have been used and abused, and society has turned a blind eye. And the reason we can absolutely hone in on Starmer and why he's such a hypocrite is because he had a chance to do something. I was on air when Jess Phillips is another one, she's in the front, went in the chamber just before the break for Easter and went, they're not going to have a national inquiry, we're going to have, and shot off, right? Jess Phillips has spent her life talking about women's rights, and I want to stick up for women who are stalked. I want to make sure that women's safety, blah, 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 right? What about young girls' safety who are being raped? Why did you not come out with that, Jess? You come from Birmingham. Your seat is in Birmingham.
And when, after the event in January, when everybody in Labour said, we don't need a national inquiry, we've already had one, there's no point in worrying about it, we better get on with just implementing the recommendations of the last one, suddenly when he said, just before he went off to Canada, let's have a national inquiry, she went very quiet. She didn't say anything. She didn't come out and say, well, hang on a minute, you told us we didn't need one back in January.
So a politician with any moral compass would say, hold on a minute, I'm not working for a man who changed his mind on something that matters to me so strong, which proves that even those people who purport to be all about, what's right and what's wrong, are just interested in climbing the greasy pole.
Yeah, and they'll say anything that they're told to say. Don't forget, they had a vote in the Commons, and they all voted against having a national inquiry. So the idea that they're now...
There was a whip, wasn't a three-line whip? They were told to vote against it.
To vote against it. And the idea that they're all now punching the air going, we must have a national inquiry. You just think, well, do you think the people of this country are stupid? Do you think they don't know what's going on here? You people don't care about having a national inquiry. You just think it might keep everybody a bit happier.
I don't know what you think. I've been accused of going overboard a little bit on this, but I don't think the British people are going to stomach that. I don't think they'll stomach a whitewash. I don't think they will stomach delays. I think this is probably one of the biggest disgraces. I mean, we've talked about the post office scandal. That was horrendous. But I mean, I've got a father on at 6 o'clock whose daughter was groomed, raped, passed around, slid into drug addiction and died at 29. This man has spent years, Tony Sutton, trying to get justice, but has never been listened to and has been vilified and called racist. I've got a voice note. I want you to hear this. Berry, Carl on the grooming scandal. Go.
I will never, ever be embarrassed to be British. I'm embarrassed of this government. I'm embarrassed of the last government. I'm embarrassed of the police, but I'll never, ever be embarrassed of my country. I love Great Britain, and one day it will be great again. And the reason it'll be great again, because all these people that have done this over the years to these children and who have turned a blind eye will be brought to book. So no, I'll never be ashamed to be British, because at the end of the day, these people committing this aren't British. I'm not doing it. You're not doing it. So why should we be ashamed?
Interesting point.
It is a good point. And I think the point is that people have now seen that there is people power in this country. We've been riding this particular story for a very long time, and people have had enough. And I think, you know, somebody sent me a message today and finished with that. The people have had enough. And I think that's a new kind of mantra for all of us to say, enough is enough. You know, we've taken it and taken it and taken it, and we're not taking it anymore.
It's almost
and
like
now it looks as though they're weak. The government are now running scared because look at what they've done. They've reversed the pension allowance.
Farmers next, any money?
Yeah, because they've seen the power that people have. Because they're finished if they don't do what we want.
Which makes me think that you know, it's almost like the British people have had a gutful. It's almost as if, and I said it yesterday, like with COVID and the cost of living crisis and the expense scandal and everything that's gone on, opening your doors to people from Ukraine, all the stuff, everything that's going on in the world. And I keep coming back to it. You live your life correctly, you do everything right, and you see yourself at the back of the queue. Another voice note, Jack on the grooming gangs, go.
How can you even need a report into whether you need a national inquiry for something that morally needs to be done out of the honesty that our young girls and vulnerable are looked after and given every bit of opportunity to have a better life? It just doesn't make sense. Can you make sense of it?
Not at all, mate. The other thing that came out from Yvette Cooper, which was blindingly obvious to anybody here and anybody with a brain cell, was that a large proportion of these asylum seekers coming over, and today we announced until 40,200 have come over since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, the man that was going to smash the gangs. They've got no bleeding plan either. A large proportion of these men coming over are not only committing crimes, but the front page of the Telegraph was interesting today as well.
Yeah, they're committing sex crimes. Last year, the figures from, and these are proper figures from the Ministry of Justice, these are people who have been convicted of sex crimes. A third of them have come from asylum-seeking countries, and a further, I think, 8% of them, sorry, a quarter of them have come from asylum-seeking countries, a further 8%, which makes it a third altogether, have come from countries where they haven't said where they're from. So they're basically asylum seekers. A quarter of sex offences in this country last year caused by asylum seekers. It's as clear as the nose on your face. Nigel Farage said it today. That's the link that will kill off Keir Starmer and his Labour government, because they have encouraged it. It's got worse under them, and we're now actively actually allowing people to come into this country and rape and sexually assault our women.
And do you know what's really interesting? Having worked with you for 2 years, when we've said this for a long time, we have been vilified by many, many people online, some nearer to home, right? Which is fair. People have opinions. But actually, where I think he is so wrong, Starmer, is it's not far right, Mikey. That language is truthful. It's common sense. If you have people, illegal aliens, coming into this country who have no... And I am sick to death of the rubbish spouted by the left. Oh, well, they're not escaping war-torn countries. We're done with that. They're coming into a country that is wiping their backside, right? Making it too easy for them to come in. And then they're committing heinous crimes. And under the guise of an ideology of, oh, we should all live together, we're turning a blind eye to that. But hold on a second, I'm going to say it again. Lucy Connolly wrote something not very nice, and I don't condone any of it, about the Muslim community, and is in jail for 31 months. Can people explain that?
It's absolutely ridiculous.
It's imbalanced.
Nonsensical. And if they've got any brains, they'll get her out of jail as well. I think she's due to possibly be released in August. But, you know, if they had any brains whatsoever, which they don't have, they would let her out.
Do you think, Nigel, did he give any take on how he would stop the boats? Was there anything in your conversation?
Reform's policy is that they will turn them around. They will physically turn them around and take them back to France. Now, the niceties of how you do that, I mean, there are very many different ways you can do it. There are boats that can tug them. There are, you know, possibly naval vessels that can be put in charge of them. You can put the special boat service in. There's any number of ways you could do it. But effectively, he said, it's basically our fault. He said, you can't keep blaming the French. It's our fault. People come here because it's a nice soft touch. They know they're going to get looked after. They know they're going to get free stuff. They're going to get benefits. They're going to get taken on trampolining lessons. They're going to get taken to football matches. They're going to be treated better than the people who are actually born here and make a living here and pay taxes here. And so that's the draw. And as long as that's the draw, they're going to keep coming.
But how can a politician not see that the draw is the reason that they're all coming in the first place?
I don't understand what politicians think and how they think. It's impossible to know how they come up with some of the rubbish they come out with, which is clearly just fantasy in their head.
You can take... I mean, what's the name of that man we just did Plank with? Rafe who?
Rafe Heidel-Manku.
Amazing. He said it's really, I mean, he said it's really, really simple. I wouldn't, he said, with the help of the Royal Navy, let any single person who cannot prove that there's a reason they should be here set foot on British soil. They should be put on boats, right, transferred to and taken somewhere like Georgia or the Falkland Islands or the Ascension Islands or somewhere off Scotland in a detention centre with no trappings and no brilliance and they would very soon send a message, a bit like Trump did it on the Mexican border. People were going, oh, hold on a second, there's no point in going, because we might be able to screw the Americans, because we're being screwed. Aren't
exactly.
we? Every single day.
And there's any number of varieties of, of possible things that we could do. I mean, I said this years ago, Rafe said it today, especially during COVID, when they were still coming, by the way, and the only way you could get to Britain when there was a travel ban was on a dinghy. I mean, that's how ridiculous it was. The people were still coming in. And, forget about whatever the threat was in terms of what they might be carrying with them. Put them on the disused, cruise ships. The cruise ships weren't being used at that time. They're all secure. You can put them all in locked rooms. You can put them in a pretty secure area, and you can sail the boat off to the Falkland Islands or off to the Ascension Islands or some British, territory abroad. And they're on a boat. They're not actually on British soil. That's the start. And do you know,
until the last breath goes out of me, I will never be able to stand, which is why we'll keep fighting, right? There are politicians and people in authority who are prepared to come on stations and shows, not on this, never are they prepared to do this, and say, but we need to consider people's feelings. They're escaping war-torn countries. They're this, they're that, the other, right? Listen. But they don't give a toss about 8-year-old white girls being raped. That's what I cannot, as a father, that just doesn't resonate with me. That is morally repugnant
to me. It's baffling. It is baffling. But, I mean, you hear them even now on other outlets, not this one, obviously, but you hear them even now saying things where you can clearly tell that the person speaking thinks that all immigrants are good and basically all British white people are bad. Because we're racist, we're small-minded, we're Little Englanders, we don't have a broader view of the world, we don't like foreign food, we don't like garlic, all these kind of stereotypes about people, who go on holiday to Benidorm. They hate the British people, these lefties.
But they all want to come here.
But of course they all want to come here, but they love immigration. They want everybody who comes here from another country to be told how wonderful they are.
Well, maybe D-Day's coming, because what they're doing is forgetting the people that elected them are actually fed up to the back teeth of being treated like second-class citizens. Plank of the Week drops Friday. It's a brilliant one, by the way.
It's a good one.
Absolutely brilliant. And Mike back with Morning Glory tomorrow morning. Thank you, bud.
Not at all.
We had dinner last night. We had a couple of bottles.
Couple of Swifties.
A couple of
steaks, and a couple of people who came up and said how much they enjoyed what we were doing, which is always nice.
It was very, very nice. Mike Graham, the legend, back tomorrow morning with Morning Glory. I nearly got that right. 20 to 5. We're on Drive. We're back in 3. I'm off for a week.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back 18 minutes to 5. Loads of response. John McClane. Wasn't he in Die Hard? Yeah, he was, wasn't he? Jez, with regard to the rape gangs, what sickens me along with everything else is the fact that no Muslim community leaders or Muslim scholars ever called this out. Utter silence from the wider Muslim community, who I'm no doubt know about this. I think they should be more vocal. Maria's in Worcestershire. Good afternoon, Jez. I'm listening to your show in despair. Why do these illegal immigrants, why are they allowed to get British citizenship and then behave? This practice must be stopped. We must surely have an answer. Who's this from? I don't know. Interesting, though. Jez, concerning the gang rape inquiry, we need a completely independent body to investigate the whole establishment, from the perpetrators to the highest levels of government, including the CPS. MBS and the Prime Minister and Cabinet members. This body should have all powers, legal or otherwise, to go into any department, local council, police forces, hospitals or the civil service to get the answers that we, the British public, now want, including jail sentences for those who have been involved in any way, shape or form and have tried to sweep this disgrace under the carpet. I suggest asking Trump to send an FBI task force to run the inquiry. What will happen is, and why people are concerned that this inquiry will be a whitewash, is guess who'll decide who's going to head the inquiry? Sir Keir Starmer. Scott, Hank, thank you. He says, I work in hotels as a refurb contractor, Jez. The hotels are full of illegal migrants, and I can tell you they're mainly men. They are being given mountain bikes, iPads and phones, as well as being housed and fed. This is not one or two hotels. We're talking about up and down the country. Also, part of the deal to house them there in hotels, at the end of the contract, the government pay for a full refurb. And I know because I'm a contractor that gets given money for it. 17 minutes to 5. One of the things that came out of course, that bombshell announcement by Yvette Bulls on Monday was that, oh, what a shock, illegal migrants made up a large number of these men perpetrating crimes against young white girls. Henry Bolton, our international border control expert, legendary Henry Bolton, won't be surprised when I tell him that today we revealed that since Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, 40,200 illegal migrants have come into the United Kingdom because we haven't got a bleeding border. This is a man who said, I'm going to crush the gangs and sort this out.
Yeah, no, we've got a border, but it's at the moment nothing more than symbolic. It is porous. All of the cocaine, all of the heroin, 97% of the firearms used in crime all come across our borders. The National Crime Agency is asking now people who go to the beach in the summer to keep an eye open for suspicious boats that are smuggling cocaine. I mean, you know, this is what we're relying on to secure our borders. The whole thing is a circus. There is nothing, to use that terrible expression, joined up about it. There should be a whole of government effort. It's not. You've just been discussing it. You know, you've covered all the bases, really. I think, you know, in your discussion just now with Mike that I was listening to. You know, a government that does not secure its borders is a government that is not governing. That's quite simple. And if it's not governing, then the rule of law starts to collapse. Credibility and therefore public trust in public institutions collapses. And where does that take society? I mean, I put out a video yesterday, and I questioned whether this government actually has, although it won an election, does it any longer have a democratic mandate, a legitimacy to govern? I don't think it does. I don't believe that it has the support of anywhere near sufficient people to be able to claim that it's got that legitimacy.
Unfortunately, you know this and I know this, we are in a position where we have another 4 years of this. I'll make a prediction. I believe that Richard III and scary Ed Miliband and Starmer will not survive this parliament. But for me, and I'm not being dismissive in any way, HB, for me that's irrelevant. What's relevant is not just Keir Starmer, the Tories, people in the police, people in local government, people in the NHS have thought, and I keep getting back to this, right, have thought it's okay to turn a blind eye. I don't care where you come from. I care that the very basic human decency behaviours, which is not raping 8-year-old white girls, if that's not adhered to, you then end up with anarchy. I honestly, Henry, the last 2 days, for the first time in my life, a guy got angry with me. I'm embarrassed. This is a stain. This is a national disgrace.
Me too. Look, I have a big thing about leadership. I used to teach various people in various countries. I used to give talks on leadership. And one of the things I've always said is one of the traits that an individual needs to possess to be an effective and good leader is moral courage. Yeah. And I've been saying that a lot recently. The government needs to have the moral courage to act, and as did the previous one. But now, after the last few days, I'll be honest, I don't think you said it just now, they don't have a moral compass. No. They don't know what is right and they don't know what is wrong.
But how can you not, right? So explain to me how duped we are, right? Our Prime Minister, you're implying, and I don't disagree with you, doesn't have the moral aptitude to realise that raping young girls far transcends trying to secure the Muslim vote or upsetting his multicultural ideology. It far transcends any of that because morally, I'm going to use the word again, it's completely repugnant. That's what I don't get.
It sickens me to the core, Jeremy, and it sickens me to the core that we've got a government that seems to not know what to do about this. I think we have evolved as a society over the last 20 years or so, maybe a bit longer, to be incredibly self-centred, self-interested. Our politicians don't serve the country and the British people. They serve themselves and they serve their political parties. And when you're in that situation, when you have spent building your entire career on that basis, that it's about getting into Downing Street, it's about getting the power, getting that prestige, getting that status, winning that election, rather than delivering for Britain and the British people, then I think if you spent years doing that, as he has, trying to get there, then I think perhaps you actually do lose your way. We all know that leaders around the world in various situations have stayed in power too long. They've lost touch with reality and their society, and they start to make massive mistakes. And I think, we've got a political class that's in that state at the moment. And I don't despair, because I think this country has got the most amazing people. But what we don't have is leadership in the right place. We just don't have it. And leadership that is not self-serving. And if we had leadership that had a moral compass, that had clear vision, and that had the moral courage to actually do the right thing, to identify and do the right thing, then these problems are not that difficult to solve. No. They truly aren't. You're
implying something that I've thought for a long time, that we have politicians in this country who are proactive, not proactive, they're reactive. They're too scared of following gut instinct. It's got to be focus group led. They're too scared of losing. I come back to Trump the whole time. It annoys some people, but he doesn't give a damn whether he gets elected out. He gives a damn of trying to do what he said he was going to do and sod the consequences. And I think that is entirely what we need in this country. Sum it up for me, Henry, the last few days. What do you make of this whole thing?
I think we've just said it. I mean, this whole thing reveals that we have got a government, and in fact, with the vote yesterday, we've got a majority of members of the House of Commons who do not have the moral compass, do not have moral courage, therefore, because you can't have moral courage without compass, and therefore don't know which way is up in terms of right and wrong. So and until that's solved, until we get leadership in position that serves the British public first, then I don't think any of this is going to be solved, because that's not the priority for these people. The priority is themselves, their party, their ideology. And that scares me. It makes me absolutely bloody furious. And I'm just passionate about trying to do something about it. But
we all are, mate.
We're going to have to pull together to do it.
Completely agree. Henry Bolton, thank you, my friend. International border control expert, also the Social Democrat Party's spokesman for foreign affairs, defence and security. Talk Drive, 9 minutes to 5. Back in 3.
rapes are committed by white people. And that they will still be saying that. This inane, asinine response to what is a massive nationwide scandal.
Yeah.
But white people do it more. It is such a moronic chant. And yet I wrote about this at the weekend for the Sunday Times, and I could see below the line the Labour supporters saying, he hasn't done a U-turn.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
6 minutes to 5. Thank you for all your messages. Phil Down says, if the grooming gang's investigation is done correctly, Jez, we will need to build more prisons to keep all those who covered it up in. Couldn't agree more. Jez, our Navy are not fulfilling their duties. They exist to protect our shores from potential terrorists and criminals. They need to shape up and stop being pathetic. My father was in the Royal Navy in World War II and was torpedoed 3 times and fought to stop the UK being taken over by foreign powers. And I don't understand why we are rolling over. Abs couldn't agree. Could not agree more. Dave Lancaster in Portsmouth. I really want Carolyn Levitt and Maggie Oliver to conduct the rape gang inquiries. Let me tell you about the amazing Maggie Oliver, who was on the show when the news broke on Monday. She served a judicial review on the Home Office. She will not be running the inquiry in any which way at all. She should be given a damehood. She should be created, I would have thought, minister to deal with this. I think she's utterly wonderful. She has forsaken her career and taken so many batterings from people to get the truth, and she should be saluted forever. John Lawler, thanks, Jez, loving the show. Why can't the government rent all the abandoned pontoon sites that are all still furnished and hold about 6,000 people per site? Why can't they take them to a site like that and be held out on site as a holding centre till it's decided what to do? I wouldn't let them put a foot in, mate. I'm different on that. Dean says, yesterday I saw someone flying a Union Jack at half-mast outside their house. A brilliant way to show dissatisfaction with this awful government and where we are. I'm surprised, to be fair, myself, he wasn't arrested, or she, for flying a Union Jack in the first place. Ian, he's got a voice note on the grooming gangs. Go.
There's been such a lack of any Muslim leader or whatever coming out and criticising their fellow countrymen. It also seems that by their silence, they're complicit in the whole thing and approve of it all. Where is the leadership for the Muslim population? And the fact that they're not coming out and condemning it leads everyone to, and it's the wrong thing to say, but you broad brush the whole faith with the same brush. You know, where's the leadership? Non-existent.
And for people who think that's an outrageous comment, that's his opinion. I mean, there are many people who will agree that if we'd had some noise from those communities, that would have gone a long way to explaining why we're all so frustrated. So the phone lines, Twickenham and Michael, you got 2 minutes on Talk Drive. What you got?
Yeah, hi, I had a number of points. One point was that the policing's actions in all this by threatening to arrest, like, fathers and grandfathers who are going out to sort of save their children, and they're being threatened with arrest. This is obviously happening up in the northern towns where the rapes are going on. It's just mind-boggling. I don't get my head around it at all, what the police are threatening to arrest the parents, shall we say. The other one was the Tories have had years to sort of get on top of this. Most of them are Labour-run government, council, sorry. So you'd have thought the Tories would have used that as a stick to beat the Labour people with.
I couldn't agree more. The Tories, and probably further back than them, are complicit in this national disgrace. I agree with you about the police, sadly. I mean, it's a good moment to tell you an amazing exclusive at 6 o'clock. Tony Sutton, whose daughter Tessa was groomed, raped and died from a drug addiction she fell into because she was a victim, will be on this show to tell his story. Very quickly to Halifax. Mark, you've got 1.5 minutes. What's your story, mate? What you got?
So, hi there, Jeremy. I'm an ex-soldier, and I spent a load of time in Cyprus and in in the Middle East, in certain parts of the Muslim world. And they seem to like Sharia law there. What I think we should be doing now is for people that are found guilty of this, and those that are found guilty of collaborating, which in some ways is even bloody worse. You know, they made excuses and hidden this stuff. I think they should bring in Sharia law for those people that are found guilty. They keep telling us that Sharia law should be a thing, and you've got the guys in Parliament standing up and talking about Sharia law and marrying cousins. We've got to be strong. We were one of the strongest nations in the world.
We're not anymore, mate. We're gutless. We're not a strong nation anymore. How are we strong?
Yeah, you know, I wore a uniform and I was proud to wear it. My youngest son is now wearing a uniform and is proud to wear it.
Yeah.
Why isn't the rest of the country proud?
Because we've been taught through an ideology that we can't be proud of anything we've done, we can't be proud of anything we stand up for, and yet here we are, right? This country that's sort of almost ridiculed internationally, increasingly, still a haven for everybody, because as I keep saying, I said at the beginning of the show and the end of this hour as well, we offer so much. We make it such a pull to come here. And I just want to say this. I get it if you're flush. I get it if the streets are paved with gold. But they're not. We're skin. And the worst part of all of this, apart from the moral just disgust that I feel, is that the British people are being put at the back of the queue. As I keep saying, they're put at the back of the queue. They live their lives correctly. They do everything properly. And yet these scumbags, and I don't care who gets upset, can come into this country because the majority are committing crimes, right? What was it Mike said? A quarter of sex crimes in this country were committed by foreigners, for God's sake. People coming in. We have to do something about it, but we are governed by people who are more interested in seemingly doing the right human rights thing than protecting the British people. 0344 499 1000 is the only telephone number you need. 87 222. Start your message with the word tour. The news at 5 is next on Talk Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is
Hour 2 of Drive for Wednesday. We're live across the UK on the station talk that is about 100% common sense. Your chance to come on and talk about things that perhaps other mainstream media outlets wouldn't want you to talk about. I was talking about this grooming gang scandal today with Mike. We filmed Plank. It's on Friday, of course, 7 o'clock it drops. And he was talking about this 5 years ago. Nigel Farage was talking about this 10 years ago. People were vilified. People were labelled as racist. You're being very disgusting. You don't seem to understand how important multiculturalism and social cohesion is. And we need all these people in this country because at the end of the day, you know, it improves us. And whilst I absolutely acknowledge, and I want to make this point, that legal migration can absolutely benefit the United Kingdom. Nobody will ever be able to prove to me or even convince me in any which way that illegal migration does. We know now that yes, a large proportion of people who have committed these rapes, that's what it is, forget the word grooming, are illegal migrants. Yes, we also know many are from the British Pakistani community and the Muslim community. Not all of them, but a majority. That is a fact. It's out there now. And the feeling of despair, I don't think I've ever sensed it doing something like this. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number if you'd like to be on between now and 7 o'clock. Text to 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Let's go to Staffordshire. Aaron, you're on Talk Drive. A very good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon, Jeremy. Good to speak to you. So these heinous crimes are going back, I believe, to the Blair Brown government. So we've had successive prime ministers, MPs, doctors, nurses, police, social workers, teachers. The list is endless of people that could have been involved, know these things are happening and have turned a blind eye. So that is a lot of people that have sort of dismissed it for the fear of, I guess, being classed as racist. Mm-hmm. But my main worry about all this is it will get whitewashed, and it'll be whitewashed because the Islington set and the lefty, wokey liberals of this country would rather sacrifice the lives of young children than be seen to be not putting this hands out to this no borders policy we seem to have, which I just it horrifies me, to be honest, Jeremy. Really
I'm so with you. And I just want to say we seem, in my humble, you know what, the soundbite that you just came out with is exactly right. It's what Brendan O'Neill said yesterday. We've sacrificed the lives of young girls, their lives, and I mean mentally, physically, in whatever way, on the altar of some ideology that tells us that almost everything that we believe in is crap, everything we do is wrong. It's nonsensical to me, but I again, it's how you put it. I will not stop believing that the British people, yes, they've had enough, but they know what to do. And by that I mean, I believe they're starting to believe that their voice can be heard. And I don't think that any elected politician, on whatever level, from whatever political party, has anything but the absolute need to listen and understand the swell of support for just the truth. Okay, the truth. There's something horrendous in my mind if you screw pensioners. There's something horrendous in my mind if you try and destroy the farming community. There's something awful in my mind if you treat people who have fought for this country, for our liberty, and allow them to just live on the streets whilst allowing migrants to come in. But we're talking children, right, Aaron? We're talking girls. We're talking young white girls whose lives will never be the same. And I'm completely with you. If they whitewash this, I firmly believe the British public will not allow it. Thank you for your call, mate. Let's go to Norwich quickly. Barry, you're on Talk Drive. What you got?
Hi, good evening, Jerry. Yeah, I just want to make a comment on the Labour government and this grooming, right? I want to say that the three main jobs of any government, but of this particular government and the government before, is to make sure the safety of the citizens of this country are safe, to make sure we have a strong military, and to make sure the borders are secure.
Well, we're screwed then, aren't we, on all three?
Well, yeah, but they're not doing it. And I agree with what Henry Bolton said earlier on. I don't think this government has a mandate now yet to govern this country, because not only they are putting the safety of British citizens in danger. And when I say that, they are allowing these undocumented illegal immigrants who come from cultures that do not align with ours. They treat women like garbage. They agree in child marriage. They abuse children, and you know, and.
And here's I'm going to jump in and help you, because I'm really passionate about this, and I think a couple of people have sort of feared that treading down that path is dangerous. I'll go further. I'll go further. I don't believe that a majority of these communities, religions, can possibly morally agree. I might be wrong, but the fact there is deafening silence from the leaders of those communities also speaks volumes, in my humble opinion, because I want to know that people are as morally outraged as I am. I hear it now from politicians, but I don't hear it from politicians for 30 years. It's a disgrace. So, Barry, I've got to move on, but really grateful for your call. 10 past 5, 0344 499 1000. Loads of texts. We'll get to them. It's just busy, busy, busy. Has been all week. This really matters to you, which means it matters to us. 87222. My next guest, I call him a friend. Former Labour MP, actually. A man who then stood for reform. Colourful life like mine, but a man whose common sense shines through now. Simon Danczuk, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Jeremy. It's good to be with you.
Oh, goodness me, a northerner, not the Islington set, somebody who represented Rochdale, somebody who has been in the epicentre of this. Si, I don't know, have you got any daughters?
Yeah, I have one daughter and 3 boys.
I think for the first time in my broadcasting career since Monday, I feel sick to the stomach. I cannot fathom, I cannot accept, I cannot get over the fact, and I'm not interested in the party politics. I said it all week. I'm not. I don't give a toss. I think that there are people who are complicit from all walks of life. Policemen and women, social workers, medicals, politicians, local politicians. What the hell, Simon Danczuk, does this say about the United Kingdom? It's a disgrace, man, a national disgrace.
It's the biggest criminal justice scandal that I can ever recall, probably in history, and that is not an exaggeration. The girls that have been abused, raped by these groups is just phenomenally high in numbers. And we've been doing nothing about it. You point out, I was the MP for Rochdale from 2010 to 2017, and the Rochdale grooming scandal broke on my watch in 2012, and I started examining it very quickly, and I quickly mentioned, it was on a Radio 5 interview, I remember it to this day, I said ethnicity and religion are a key factor in why these perpetrators are abusing these victims. And the sky fell in on me from a Labour Party perspective. I had the chair of the Parliamentary Labour Party, Tony Lloyd, tell me not to mention ethnicity or religion because it would affect the vote. And he was a senior figure in Labour.
He told you not to mention it because it would affect the vote?
Absolutely. And he was going, at the time, transitioning from being a Labour MP to wanting to be the police commissioner for Greater Manchester, which was elected and which he won. And he knew that he relied on a big Muslim vote to be able to get that. And that's, I believe, one of the reasons he was saying it to me. My neighbouring MP, Jim Dobbin, a Labour MP, senior in age and well regarded, he said to me at a function, because we shared the same local authority area, listen, Simon, there's no advantage to mentioning the ethnicity of the perpetrators. I ignored all of that and carried on saying it, but it certainly didn't do me any good. I have to say I did a lot of work with the victims. Girl A in the grooming scandal in Rochdale, I supported very heavily. I met her family, I met her on numerous occasions. We did some really important work on this. But I have to say, that how many years ago is that? And now we're only just starting to really look at it in detail. Quite incredible, really.
Do you have words to explain to me? Imagine I know nothing, which is in many people's minds the truth. How do politicians, officials, civil servants, police, whoever, how do they morally turn a blind eye to something that is so utterly, utterly repugnant to me and to millions of people?
Yeah, it is extremely difficult to understand, isn't it? So I think you've a number of factors operating at any one time in all of this. You've got institutions that genuinely believe in multiculturalism and think that we haven't to mention the ethnicity of the perpetrators because it might cause some disharmony within communities. But as Louise Casey, who I rate very highly, and I give her evidence in her review of the Rotherham situation several years ago. I worked with her on homelessness over 20 years ago. She's a very well-regarded public servant. She's done a really good job in this review. But she makes clear that people were Tipexing out the word Pakistani in reports about child grooming, child rape. Why would you do that? Some social workers were describing a 10, 11-year-old as a prostitute. You can't be a prostitute as a child. This is the nonsense that people were dealing with. In the light of the Rochdale grooming scandal, the chief constable for Greater Manchester came to Rochdale and said, one of the first things he said is, I've come here to celebrate multiculturalism. Talk about insensitive. People were furious about it because it was that view that had resulted in so many of these victims being attacked and it being covered up. You couldn't make it up.
It's really interesting when you said that there's this fear. There was a fear amongst the Labour Party when you were there, when you tried to raise this, that if you talked about ethnicity, it would cause disharmony in communities. I'm here to tell whoever, 10 people, I don't care, 20 people, every single day that I do this job, that there is disharmony in communities at this exact moment. And it's British people, and that's not a racist comment, it's people who are fed up to the back teeth with the fact that, you know what, I keep saying it, I've tried to do everything right and I'm at the back of the bleeding queue, and then you discover that these people who have been given everything, not a majority, but a large number of them are perpetrators of these horrific crimes. Do you believe this? I mean, it's interesting what you said about Tony Lloyd, because, of course, the fear amongst many people is that Starmer and his acolytes will whitewash this and it'll go on forever and there'll be no judicial power and the person who runs it will be, you know, picked by the Prime Minister. So do you think it'll be a whitewash? Because I don't think the British people will buy that anymore, Si.
I don't think the public will buy that. I think you're exactly right. The worry I have is since 2012, the Rochdale grooming scandal, we've had loads of illegal immigrants coming into the country. And what Louise Casey has said in her review is that in current cases, it's disproportionately high numbers of foreign nationals that are in these rape gangs. And I think that's proven to be true. And the problem is that under Starmer, illegal immigration has gone up 30% in just less than a year. So there's
30,000 illegal immigrants have come into this country. Si, don't go anywhere. I want to put a caller on. I want you to listen. This is Jane in West Yorkshire. Jane, Simon Danczuk, ex-Labour MP, is with me for Rochdale. What's your story, sweet?
Hiya. I work for homelessness in West Yorkshire.
Yeah.
And I got this call one day to give this girl an assessment. It's named Kenya. It's out today, sorry. And she told me that she'd have to leave Yorkshire because of the grooming gangs. But she'd had a baby to one of them and she wanted to come home and to be near her family. And the minute they recognised her, they just followed her around all over again.
It's been going on forever, hasn't it?
The stories are absolutely horrific, like that one. And there are other cases around Rotherham where the victim has had a child by the rapist, by the perpetrator, and the social services have insisted that the perpetrator has the right to see the child. And then some of the perpetrators use the relationship with the child as an ability to be able to stay in the country instead of being deported. This is the reality of it. But you make the point, the British public are fed up. I think this is, I don't say this lightly, it's a time of reckoning. Starmer is failing to defend the borders. He's failing.
Sorry, hold on one sec there, sir. Jane, can I just ask you something? Because
can I just tell you something? This week, it's broke my heart because I felt that I let her down because I didn't know where to go with this story.
You can always come here, sweetheart.
And but this was 10 years ago. And if I'd have known at that time, I would have met her in Leeds and taken her to social services and sat with her because that's the kind of person that I am. And it's broke my heart.
What do you make of where we're at as a society right now on the basis of what we've discovered and what you've known about?
I've got a daughter, and I used to drive to a place that she used to go to on a Monday night called Halo. And I used to start work at 5:30, but at 2 o'clock in the morning, I would go down and drive, and bring her home and take her home, and her friends if they wanted it, because that's the kind of person that I am. And I feel so sorry because I do work with social services and I do work with homelessness, and this is breaking my heart.
Do you think that social services are complicit in any which way, some of them?
I've got a really good friend who's a social worker, and he's the most kindest person that you'll ever meet, but you either get a good one or you get a bad one.
Jane, I really appreciate it. If the story affected you, you can go online, Talk. It says here you can go to Talk. I don't know, you can go to Talk what? Is that a website? Sorry, mate. All right, OK, sorry, it hasn't loaded, but you can go online if you are affected by that. We are talk.tv. OK, talk.tv/helplines. We are actually, and thank you, Jane, we'll talk to her off air. I can also announce we're doing an exclusive at 6 o'clock, which I mean, listen, totally chuffed that we've got him on, but it just, I want to personalise this. Tony Sutton, Simon, shares the story of his daughter Tessa, who was groomed, raped, slid into a world of drug addiction and died aged 29 from that, and he puts that absolutely at the heart of these perpetrators. These are real people whose lives are being blighted, and that's why I keep bringing it back to that side, because I cannot in my mind, Starmer, whatever, all of them, a police officer, a local councillor, an NHS worker, I want to swear, how do you lie down at night and close your eyes knowing that you've turned a blind eye to a child being raped, simply because you're concerned that somebody might say, oh, you're being a bit critical of the Muslim community, you're being a bit critical of illegal migrants, you're being a bit critical of... No. Right and wrong. Morality. We've all made mistakes, we've all messed up, but there are certain things in my mind that go beyond the pale. Don't you agree?
I completely agree. It's an absolute tragedy, there's no doubt about that. I did a lot of campaigning around child abuse while I was a politician. I outed Cyril Smith as a paedophile. I wrote a book about it. I met many victims of child abuse. And, you know, one of the little known facts is if you were abused as a child, sexually abused, then the chances of dying young are much more significant. You die younger if you've been abused as a child. That is just a fact.
And I think, can I jump? I know I shouldn't jump in, but I want to, and that's what really hacks me off. We now live in a society where apparently you can't let wind out or say what you think. I'm sorry, I'm suffering from anxiety, I'm having a horrible time, you've told me I'm no good at my job, or you've said, you know, I don't like what you're wearing, oh, I'm traumatised, I'm taking 6 months off work, and we pander to that rubbish, that BS, but we don't seemingly pander as we should. Pander's the wrong word. We can turn a blind eye to the rape of young girls. There's no balance there, Simon, no balance at all.
None whatsoever. And, you know, the common denominator in all of this, and we're beginning to talk about it literally just in the last few days, is Islam. Let's be honest about it. A good proportion, so they're not just Pakistani, as Louise Casey's review has shown. You know, the Police Scotland did an investigation which showed that there were 40-odd abusers in a group. And they were from Egypt, from Morocco, from various parts of North Africa, but they were all Islamic. I mean, this is the reality of it, because they have a particular view of Britain in terms of women that's derogatory, and that's the point I was making in 2012. But we're only just beginning to address that. Let's have an honest debate about it. But it's took us a long time to get here. But I don't believe the British public will give up now. I do believe it's a time of reckoning. I think they will hold this government to account on these issues. And that's why Keir Starmer has done such a big U-turn. He knows that people are furious about it.
But how you're a politician like me. You've had good moments and bad moments. How would somebody who has apparently the nous to end up as the Prime Minister, unless it was a complete con job, doesn't have the political nous or the moral nous or just the intelligence with a couple of bloody brain cells to go, my God, these were young girls being raped, standing up in January and going, oh, this is everybody jumping on the far right bandwagon. I mean, that, I don't know who advises this idiot, but I mean, that that's another poll tax moment for him. It's like the pensioners thing. It's beyond me. It's beyond... How is this man running our country if he thinks it's OK to just dismiss what's happening to these kids in such a terrible way?
I think you're right. He's glided into politics and he's glided through into becoming Prime Minister. He's not very good at politics, I have to say. And many people, I think, in Labour would agree with that. His intuition is completely flawed.
Good word.
And I think he's really struggling, actually. And I can't see him lasting that much longer. The point I'm making, it's failed on the open borders, it's failing the economy, it's failing on criminal justice. It's a time of reckoning. And I believe if something doesn't change radically, even if he doesn't resign, I think we're going to begin to see civil unrest in Britain. People are furious with the state of the country, and we can see that in the opinion polls, and it's only going to get worse under Keir Starmer.
So good to speak to you again, my friend. Delighted to have you on. We'll get you on regularly. It's been great. Simon Danczuk, former Labour MP for Rochdale, Reform defector. I remember seeing footage of him at the last election not being allowed in to talk when he was trying to stand for reform because certain people didn't think it acceptable. It was welcome here. 0344 419 1000 is the only number you need. 87222. Start your message with the word talk. It is Talk Drive time. Peter Carble, PC, is next. Hopefully not in shorts. We're coming back in 3.
You can't try and snipe at the Conservatives for things that weren't our fault.
Oh, I mean, I
This
haven't
is
got
not one
time.
of-
Don't tell your big mate Donald Trump to tell his big mate Vladimir Putin to stop killing people, then we can solve that problem like that. Are you going to be a net contributor to our society? But are you going to better the lives of the people already here?
Won't be surprised to know I disagree. It's
Why? Why do you disagree, though? Why do you want our young people left on the scrap heap? The court's time being wasted, laying down a ruling on what is a woman.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon to Rachel. She says, Jez, please don't think you've gone overboard over this grooming issue over the last few days. If those in authority have turned a blind eye, had announced the compassion that you at Talk have got for these vulnerable girls, this scandal would never have happened. Please, Talk, keep up the great work. Sandor here. I'm the son of a refugee family who came from war-torn Hungary. My family worked hard. They never had any benefits, and they've installed that attitude into their kids as well. These people coming here now have no intention to integrate or work or contribute. They have to be let go. See? That's what I love. That's positive immigration. Yeah, I've talked before about the guy that picks me up some nights who came from Bangladesh 40 years ago, and his dad said, you should be grateful for this country and work your backsides off. We talk about our makeup artists, right? Magda and Marta have come from Poland, set up a business. They employ girls. They work their backsides off. They hate the fact that people are sponging off this country. Also, Mike Graham on Kyle's show. You just can't keep them away. We love you, man. Paul, well said, Henry. This is, I know he said Henry Blofeld. Oh, no, that's a cricket commentator. This will be Henry Bolton. We need people with moral courage. May God bless you. We might need that. To the phone lines. This is Posh. In London, Tarquin. Hello, Tarquin. How are you?
Well, it's just a stage name, darling. I'm really called Jezebel, but there you go. That's a different story.
Excellent,
listen,
Tarquin.
Fantastic show, mate. You're doing a brilliant job, as are all the team.
Well, the 11 people who are listening have said that, so that's great.
Add the zeros, add the zeros. Serious point on this. Not only do I want to see all of the actual perpetrators, you know, the Muslim people who believe that this is part of their culture, deported. I don't see why we should even put them in prison, Jeremy. But not so much that. It's the cadre, the layer upon layer over 20 years of senior police officers who are now languishing in their lovely chalets around Europe on gold-plated pensions. I want that money back. That was dereliction of duty, Jeremy. I want that money back in our coffers, and I want them all banged to rights, all of them. And if it takes 20 years to root them all out and find out who tipex these bits out, that is a criminal effect. That's a crime.
I completely agree, and I think that any justice in this should be that there is judicial power with the inquiry, and it goes top to bottom. The fear amongst so many of us is this, that the establishment will whitewash this to cover its own backside, and that frightens people. Understandably, that frightens people, right?
Exactly, and it wouldn't be enough just to bring the actual gentlemen, should we call them that, to justice that were directly involved in raping children on a gang scale, but the people who sat in the background and thought, oh, my career depends on it, my pension, don't say anything, Fred. Oh, I won't do. I want them people, because if it weren't for them, it could never have happened at the street level.
Could not agree more. Really appreciate it. Call Tarquin in London, 530 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. I thought my next guest would be in the studio because I bumped into him and his father the other day. He had a pair of shorts on that looked like he could, I don't even know. Peter Cardwell, welcome to Talk Drive.
Hello, how are you?
Stand up.
No.
Stand up.
No.
Are you wearing shorts?
No.
Oh, God, you're naked. What? Oh, you've got boxer shorts on. Have you? Oh, dear.
I'm neither confirming nor denying any of that.
You're not half naked, Cardwell. This is too much.
I'm fully clothed. But
can I just say what a lovely man your father is? How disappointed he must be in you. No, I'm joking. He's what a lovely man.
Well, that's very kind. I'm sure he is very disappointed, even mugged off, one might say.
Great. Welcome to the show, mate. We spoke outside. We haven't spoken. I make no apology for this. I don't think in anything I've covered in many years on this station and others have I felt so sick to the stomach. I feel such, honestly, it's so repugnant to me, irrespective of politics, and I know you're a political nerd. I know you haven't got kids, but I know that you have a moral core, which is so important and so in tune with this station, that whoever has been part of this, I fear won't be dragged, but they should. And I thought the last caller was dead. There is layer upon layer of people who are responsible for covering up. Brendan O'Neill described it yesterday as the greatest stain on British society ever, and that, you know, kids, young 8-year-old girls' lives have been blighted on the altar of some rubbish ideology of multiculturalism that has been proven to fail miserably. What would you say to that, pal?
Yeah, I'd agree with every single word. They were called promiscuous. They were called prostitutes. There were bits of the law that allowed people to argue in court that 13-year-olds were in love with older people, and it wasn't unreasonable to have sex with them. It is just absolutely horrendous. There's no doubt about that, and it's not just the perpetrators. They should be banged up and the key thrown away. It's people who turned a blind eye. It's people who said, a bit difficult to talk about that. It's people who said that, frankly, even talking about it or calling for an inquiry, which was then later called, was jumping on a right-wing bandwagon. That's what the Prime Minister said. Why did he change his mind? Well, he knew what Louise Casey was going to say. He knew this report was going to recommend a national inquiry. Why not just go for it in the first place? We have to be a bit cynical.
Did he hope that I mean, I could be wrong. Did he hope that Louise Casey would be a whitewash and she wouldn't? I mean, I thought there was a lot in her report that jumped out, but the most frightening thing straight up was when she said, I didn't really even need to scratch the surface. I just started looking and I found things that were abhorrent straight away.
And that's the worst bit. The worst bit is that there has been a lack of curiosity in so many parts of the system. There's been a lack of resources. There's been, even with a national inquiry, which I'm glad it's going ahead. I hope it helps. But right now, this exact moment, the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary could say, we are going to direct every police force in the United Kingdom to put more time, effort, resources, money, whatever is needed, into dealing with these cases. Now, Louise Casey has said that about 800 cases will be reopened. They'll be looked at. That's a good thing. But the policing resource could be directed to this already, without an inquiry, without waiting a number of years for this to happen, without having all the detail in the public domain that we know is there. It just hasn't been, the light hasn't been shone on it. And the fact is that there are loads of people who won't be guilty of criminality per se, but were guilty of saying, oh, we'll just leave that, oh, it's a bit difficult, oh, I'll not, push
People
that.
in public office, do you mean, Pete?
I do. I mean people in public office.
Well, then they should be arrested and thrown in jail. But my fear is that they won't, because they'll defend, apologise and make excuses for each other. But I said something earlier which I think can be construed in the wrong way, and I don't mean it. You know me. I'm not condoning any. I'm not trying to. What I'm trying to say is, I don't believe the British people are going to accept a whitewash. I don't believe the British people's level of patience has anywhere else to go. I think I said it an hour and a half ago. I think on the back of everything that's happened, cost of living, COVID, all those things, I think you get pushed and you get pushed and you get pushed. The pensioners get pushed. The homeless veterans get pushed. I was in my hometown on Saturday. I went to get something from the supermarket for her indoors, the enemy, and there was a homeless veteran, and I started talking to him, gave him a few quid, and he was saying, and he made the point I thought was astonishing. He was sat there with his badge from the old days. He was probably 60s. He was trying to get enough to spend the night in a Premier Inn, and he said to me, I don't understand why I did 14 years and you can come into this country and I'm on the streets. And I just remember looking at him and thinking, how wrong have we got this? How imbalanced is what to so many is right? And I do honestly think that the British people will not. I'm not talking about Starmer or the Tory. I don't care about politics. I think if
Jeremy,
I think if it's whitewash, we're in trouble. We're in trouble if it's whitewash.
It's about fairness. It's about what is absolutely at the core of our nation. Yeah. The core of being British is fairness, fair play, honest day's work for an honest day's pay, realising that this inquiry has to be extensive, it has to change things, and it has to be faster than many inquiries have been previously. But even right now, there's so many people who know the country isn't working for lots and lots of different reasons. There are paedophiles who can't be deported for whatever reason. Just sort that out. Just sort it out. Just deport them, get rid of them, make sure they serve a sentence either here or at home, wherever that happens to be. There are loads of people coming in, over 20,000 now. Many of them, we don't know where they've come from. We don't know who they are. Would they be terrorists? Would they be paedophiles? Some of them will be perfectly straightforward people who just want a better life. I mean, they're illegal migrants and that's an issue, but they're here with reasonable intentions. The problem is that lots of people aren't, and we don't know who those people are.
I saw a clip from Margaret Thatcher in 1983. I don't know if you've seen it online yesterday, and it basically, she stood up and somebody was talking about immigration. She said, to paraphrase, legal migrants who bring something to this country should be welcomed with open arms. But she said, and I quote, if we get to a point where people come into our country illegally and get treated better than the very people who have provided the money that has paid for those services, Mr. Speaker, we are going to end up with chaos, national chaos. She said that 30 years ago. And I'm not, it's difficult. I was talking to Mike earlier, Pete, right? So Mike Graham's been talking about this for 5 years. Nigel Farage, who was on Breakfast, has been talking about it for 10 years. People were vilified. People were called racist. How dare can you say that these are Pakistani men or Muslim men? They are. And a large number, which is the other thing I want to talk to you about, because today, I mean, talk about a farce in the channel. It's past 40,222 illegal migrants have come into this country since Starmer became Prime Minister. Still no plan. I'm of the mindset, love to know your opinion, that if the pull factor was less, if we didn't wipe their backsides and give them everything to the detriment of the British people, they wouldn't come. So pick them up in the Channel, in boats, the Navy or whatever, and take, I'm being completely serious, and send, not a foot in our country, go to the Ascension Islands or wherever in Scotland, in a detention centre, because I think pretty bloody soon the message you get back to people that we're not a soft touch, and we are a soft touch. We are.
There's no deterrent, Jeremy. There's absolutely no deterrent for these people coming here. They know, and we've seen in the last few days, Talk exclusive report yesterday, talking about migrants being given flying lessons.
I mean, what the hell's that all about?
What is that about? There are people who would love to do something as luxurious and expensive as that. There are so many people who can't for lots of reasons. We live in a country where 15-year-old girls are called prostitutes. They're called trollops and much worse language than that because they say they have been reporting to police that older men have been raping them, not having sex with them, raping them, because you cannot consent to sex if you're under 16. Then there are people who are coming into this country who've contributed absolutely nothing, who may contribute absolutely nothing, who are being given flying lessons. This is just farcical. Someone needs to get a grip. There needs to be some sense of order, some sense of fairness, some sense of fair play. Maybe this inquiry will bring that. Maybe Starmer will get some sort of grip on the borders. At Prime Minister's questions today, we saw the Shadow Home Secretary talking very calmly about all sorts of issues regarding the border and the fact that Labour have not got a grip on this. The Conservatives didn't either. I'm not making a party political point, but there has to be some deterrent to crossing the Channel, because if there isn't, people are going to continue doing it, and there's going to be no incentive for them not to.
Completely agree. Just one final thing. Great comment from Nick. The trouble, Jez, in my mind, is the left worship at the altar of multiculturalism. That's all they care about. They ignore what's been going on because they just can't believe anything could possibly go wrong when you import third world values. My fear is nothing will happen. This will carry on. Unfortunately, the British people don't have a voice now because you're targeted with the term racist. I disagree with Nick. I think you were 5 years ago deemed racist, but I think it is so obvious to so many people, enhanced by what Yvette Cooper said the other day, that I don't think the government is going to be able to wheedle its way out of this. Would you agree with that?
I do. It's changing. I think the tide is turning. I think, you look at Labour, they're third in a poll that came out today. That is a consistent thing. Reform UK are doing very, very well. What is their main policy? Talking about immigration. They talk about lots of other things as well. But I had a chat with Nigel Farage this morning when he was in talking to Mike. They are going great guns, and I think that there is some change coming, and whether Reform UK get into government the next time or not, Labour will have to listen to them, will have to change things, as will the Conservatives. They'll have to realise that change has to come, fairness has to be returned. People have to feel as if they're not being taken for a ride.
Couldn't agree more, Pete. Listen, great to have you on, my friend. Are you on Drive Time tomorrow? Is he on Drive Time tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow and Friday. We've got a very special interview coming up tomorrow. So that is something I can't talk about just yet. But
why did he wink at me and say he's got a special interview? Ryan, do you know about this special interview? Ryan's got no idea. He's made it up. Listen, it'll be a far better listen to this. Peter Carbell on Drive tomorrow from 4. Thank you very much indeed. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. We're back in 3.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So we line up tomorrow. Mike Graham back with Morning Glory from 6. Julia Hartley-Brewer sounding fantastic back from 10. Hello to Stephen Stoke. There's no way on this earth that police forces, local councils have tried to hide this. Total rubbish. Someone from the top, either Labour or Tory, has said, make this go away. Interesting. Love him or loathe him, says Rachel. I think we owe a big thank you to Elon Musk. He's reignited the debate over this scandal. Without him, I don't think we'd be where we are. To the phone lines. Don't forget the number, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. Drive Paul is in Bishop Auckland. Paul, you got a couple of minutes. What you got?
Oh, thanks for taking the call, Jeremy. Appreciate it. I just stumbled across your radio programme and listened to it religiously.
Tell your friends. I need more than 11 listeners.
All right, my friend, yeah. Just I was saying to your caller before, I worked for social services for 25 years as a residential worker, and within that time, we used to do child sexual exploitation training. It was run by a charity, and that was running one of our secure units, and the unit was run by a charity. This leg of the unit was run by a charity for groomed and trafficked young girls from Rotherham and Rochdale. This was 15 years ago, and the two young girls that were facilitating the training on child sexual exploitation, who worked for the charity and supported these young girls in a secure environment to keep them safe, were appalled when I mentioned halfway through the training that predominantly the grooming gangs were Pakistani Muslims, and the facilitators stopped the training immediately and just rounded on me. We're talking about how that shouldn't be voiced, that anybody can groom, and they were appalled that voice was coming from me, a residential worker, looking after exploited and troubled young people. And like they were saying, you know, anybody can groom, and I agreed with them. Individuals can groom, I can groom, you can groom, people can groom. But I said predominantly the gangs that are targeting these young vulnerable girls from children's homes and troubled backgrounds and kind of displaced in society were predominantly Pakistani men. But
why do you think we have been so allegedly against admitting that for so long? Do you think it is the vilification of, you know, the accusation that's racist or the...
Racist, absolutely, Jeremy, racist. And I muted Tommy Robinson in the same secure environment training scenario, and that went down like a lead balloon. It was just ridiculous. But I'd like to go back to my colleagues now, 15 years later, and say, told you, because a lot of them were saying, Paul, how dare you have this view? You're working for social services, you're a residential worker, you're looking after vulnerable kids, young people that have been trafficked, although I didn't work predominantly with them in the secure unit, but we were on the child sexual exploitation, and I am talking 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'd love to go back to them now, Jeremy, and say, told you so, but I took a lot of heat for that, Jeremy.
Good for standing up, though, pal, and listen, really appreciate you being on. Glad you found the show. Tell your friends. We'll head to London. Nick, you've got 2 minutes on Talk Drive. What you got, pal?
Hello, sir. It's not just the senior officers, police officers who were involved in this, in my view. It was the politicians, it was the social workers, it was the local council officers, and it was all cheered on by the mainstream media, who wouldn't allow any kind of commentary on this. And we'll know if there's a whitewash on this, because we must have a senior MP, a politician, go to jail over this. A senior social worker has got to. A senior policeman.
You can't ever see that happening, though, can you?
Well, I fear not, but we'll know if it is a whitewash, if that doesn't happen. And this isn't going away. The mainstream media now have got a vital job to keep this.
Let me tell you about the mainstream media. I found this out when I was doing Plank earlier from Rafe, right? The night before Baroness Louise Casey, right, released this damning report, which finally nailed the fact that British Pakistani men and Muslims and, oh, shock horror, foreign criminals, illegal migrants, were at the core of this. The BBC ran a half-an-hour documentary, I've seen it, at which they talked about grooming in northern towns by white men. And I'm not sitting here saying, by the way, that white men don't groom and rape young girls. Abhorrent. Same should befall. But I remember distinctly somebody from the Rotherham Police telling me 3 years ago The problem is, Jez, if we're a little bit, heavy-handed, if we don't just pad gently, we're going to stoke up racial hatred and we're going to be accused of this, that and the other. For me, and I've said it all day and I'll keep saying it until they drag me out of here, it's not about that. It's about the difference between right and wrong. And I hope you're right. I hope from the very high to the very low, they get rounded up. Can you imagine the far right, allegedly, after Stockport? They were rounded up, Southport rather, some right, some wrong. But there's so many people, I believe, who are complicit that it'll be really interesting. Nick, thank you so much indeed for your call. What is it? 11 minutes to... Apparently, Sam Ellard's not doing sports today. He was up early on breakfast. We'll let him off. We'll see him next week. Max Scott next with his sport on Talk Drive.
My last two Prime Minister's questions, I've said to Keir Starmer, will you declare a national security emergency in the Channel? And he absolutely refuses to do it.
Right.
And I think they were in big trouble over this.
Yeah.
Big
Massive trouble. And that's why I suspect that they're going to try and fudge this whole Casey report.
So do I.
And the investigation.
So do I.
But I don't think the public are going to let them get away with it, because that's, again, the sense that I'm hearing. People are really angry about this. This is almost the final straw.
Well, the thing is, it isn't just the Labour government that's in trouble.
Yeah.
Our country's in trouble.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. It's 9 minutes to 6. There are people in this office who have renamed me the Mug Nicker. I'll tell you more later. We're delighted to be doing some sport. Good evening, the Mug Nicker. Push the button.
Sport Summary on Talk.
No Sam Ellard. We're delighted to be joined by Max Scott. I'm going to start slightly differently because I've been meaning to do this, but the subject is so serious. Today, Oliver, who's 5.5, had his sports day.
Oliver being your son?
One of them, yeah. I've got more kids than Boris Johnson, to be fair. Anyway, here's what happened. So I'm dragged. I thought, well, I better put the athletic attire on, which I usually go to just to have a coffee. And anyway, so I arrive at the school, aforementioned school, and obviously most of the dads are 30 and 40.
Right.
And I'm 60 2 weeks on Monday, at which point you say you don't look it. Brilliant. Anyway,
well, so I'm a journalist with integrity, Jazz,
not for long. Anyway, really? Is there one? Yeah, sure. And so they're all looking. Anyway, so there's about 12, and I thought, oh, God, I can't do this. And Oliver's going, Daddy, please, Daddy. So I thought, well, I'll do the rest. Anyway, do the rest. And there's a bloke next to me. This is so true. I don't know how to tell you this. Ryan's, don't worry. And I said to him, oh, you don't look too young. He said, I'm 64, I'm a granddad, I'm here. Anyway, lo and behold, I won the race. I won the race. And as I crossed the finishing line, I heard this scream. I looked behind me, and the old man, 64, had fallen over, grazed his knees, he was huddled. Anyway, they got him onto a chair, and I'm just celebrating and raising my hands, and he got quite ill. And they had to put a screen around him and call an ambulance.
Whoa.
So now I don't know what to do, because I shouldn't have been celebrating. So I hope he's all right. I'm sure he won't be listening. I hope he's all right. But yeah, you can see the headline now, can't you?
More importantly,
Jeremy Kyle ruined my granddad.
More importantly, congratulations.
Yeah. I got the gold medal. I'm very, very proud. I've strained my hamstring. I've busted something. I'm hobbling to the toilet, but we got there. Go on, excite me. The Club World Cup.
Well, look, the Club World Cup is
a waste of time.
Let's not make no bones about it. It's a cash cow for FIFA,
yeah.
Who obviously are looking at any opportunity to make more money. But for sports obsessed people like myself, with 2 weeks of no Premier League football, we're absolutely obsessed. And when it's streamed for free on DAZN, you sort of think, oh, I'll tune in. Right now, Manchester City are beating Moroccan champions Wydad Casablanca 2-0.
Wydad Casablanca, man. Wydad.
Yeah, the Geordies of the Middle East.
Who gives a damn? And Bayern Munich won 10-0. It's not football.
No, however, what I will say is I did watch Boca Juniors against Benfica, and I've been to La Bombonera in Buenos Aires. I mean, it's something different over there, the level of support. And it was the best game I've seen in years. It was so refreshing. It wasn't systems focused, and you once you get to a certain point, you've got to pass it backwards. You know, I think we've seen players like Jack Grealish, for example, be ruined because they've been obsessed with tactics and systems. What this was
Are you implying that Jack Grealish isn't the player? Are you implying that Jack Grealish doesn't fit in at Man City because he's a flair player and it's
absolutely.
Where does he go, Jack Grealish? It's a great story.
I think he needs to come to Nottingham Forest.
Wow.
No, I mean, we're likely to see him.
Who were third and finished 10th.
Or you could say the story of the season. You know,
I agree.
Avoided a points deduction.
I hope Jack Grealish does go somewhere and rediscover. We ain't got much time. British and Irish Lions, of course, led by Mario Itoje. First game, first 15 to play Argentina in the warm-up game. Where is that game?
This is in Dublin, live exclusively on talkSport with the exclusive rights holders.
I gave you that, didn't I?
You did. You've got to team me up, and I delivered. And look, it's going to be incredibly exciting. As you know, the attitude in the Lions squad is something special, but equally there's fierce competition. And for the likes of Finn Smith, who's been given the nod ahead of Finn Russell, this is his opportunity to impress Andy Farrell. Marcus Smith, who of course usually plays at 10, has found his way starting at 15.
Don't have him at 15. Never have had him at 15.
Yeah,
don't think
I
he's
understand
strong
that.
enough or big enough. I think he gets knocked over. Don't know what happened to Freddie Stewart. Don't understand that. But listen, I think it's a great spectacle. The Lions.
It is. Yeah.
I
Can't wait.
My brother emigrated to New Zealand. I'll never forget this. You think about the All Blacks. You know how rugby is different, Australia, New Zealand. Never forget this. My nephew was 4. First school trip was to watch the front row of the All Blacks train.
Wow.
That's how much of an obsession it is. And I think people forget actually how important it is, the British Lions. It'll be interesting, won't it?
Yeah, no, really looking forward to it. And I just think you look at the players in there, even the bolter in Henry Pollock.
Yeah.
You know, he's going to do something special on that tour. You know he is. And he's bringing eyes to the sport, which is what it needs.
Royal Ascot Day 2, Ombudsman winning the Prince of Wales Stakes, but racing overshadowed. Why do people always say this? Yeah.
Well, the Princess of Wales was no,
but today's racing was overshadowed by a fatal injury for Philly Harry's girl in the opening contest. Did you know that?
No, because I don't really pay attention to racing, I must say. I'm a football, rugby, cricket man. And
I don't like racing?
No, I love going. I go to the Ledger every other year in Doncaster. Yeah.
How very northern.
Well, yeah, I'm educated at State School in Doncaster, and what do? You go to the Ledger.
I had a car
and it's a great
crash
day
in
out.
Doncaster.
Did you?
Yeah.
Is that one of many?
No, the only one I've had. Actually,
Really?
What's the big road outside?
M18,
yeah,
A1?
A1, yeah, 5 mile tailbacks. Don't know why I'm having this conversation. So you're not into Royal Ascot. If you are, by the way, a tip for tomorrow, the big race tomorrow, before 7 o'clock. That's a promise. Premier League fixtures release. Fans warned of short notice changes. What does that mean?
Well, because there's all these competitions and clubs playing in Europe, etc., they're always moving fixtures at really late notice. Fans are obviously an afterthought who've already paid for tickets or hotels, etc. But Arsenal are being deemed the losers of the opening fixtures. I mean, their first 6 games, they've got United at Old Trafford on the first day of the season.
That's 3 points for Arsenal.
They've got Leeds who've come up, who are always difficult to play against. Then they've got Liverpool away, Forest at home, City at home and Newcastle away. Really difficult. Your beloved West Ham.
Yes,
I think this is a really difficult opening day fixture. You travel to Sunderland, who've just come up first time, I think, in 17 or whatever it is, back in the Premier League. It's going to be a really difficult day out for Graham Stuart and his men.
What about the tune? Who have Newcastle got day 1, do we know?
Newcastle day 1, I've not got this written down and I don't know off the top of my head, but they're going to spend big this summer because they've not got any PSR issues.
No, that's true, they will spend big. What about Forest? Will Nuno Espirito Santo still be there?
Of course he will.
Are you sure?
I'm absolutely dead certain of it. He's got a fantastic relationship with Evangelos Marinakis, despite what Gary Neville wants you to believe.
I'm not into what Gary Neville wants us to believe.
Yeah, Nuno will be there. Forest won't sell any of their big name players.
I know we joke, but I agree with you. I know they fell slightly at the end.
Yeah.
but the level of performance and the football style and just the way they did it was
And I get to follow my team in Europe, so I'm looking at, you know, those away days in the Conference League in Azerbaijan or Kazakhstan or wherever it may take me, and I'll come back with some reports from my journeys afar.
You're always welcome. Thank you very much indeed. He's so much better than Sam Mellard, isn't he? Max Scott doing Talk Drive Sport. Thank you very much indeed. Right, if you want to be on in the next, couple of minutes, 20 minutes? No, what have we got? We've got a couple of minutes to the news, and then, of course, we have got an hour of drive. 0344 499 1000. Let's see if we can slip a call in before 6 o'clock. Ken is in Northern Ireland. Ken, you're on talk. We've only got about a minute and a half. What you got?
Yep. Good evening, Jeremy. I'll just try and make it quick. I'm as sick as everybody else over the whole lot of this, but I think one thing's being overlooked. This all occurred during Labour governments, Conservative governments. How are they going to be able to be overseeing this? Keir Starmer's going to be setting terms of reference. He's going to be setting scope. He's going to be setting out what costs are due to it. It should have nothing to do with any political parties whatsoever. Should be totally independent.
Could not agree with you more. The inquiry should...
Anywhere near.
It should be independent. It should be as far away. Do you know what? I'm glad we put you on, Ken, because you're right. It should be as far away from government control. They shouldn't pick the judiciary. They shouldn't pick the rules. It should be completely... That's like marking your own homework. Completely agree. Ken in Northern Ireland, thank you very much indeed. What is it? Almost 6 o'clock. We're live across the United Kingdom. JK on Drive until 7. Kev is here in an hour's time. But next, I wanted to personalise the horrors of this week. Tony Sutton, whose daughter was groomed, raped and died from a subsequent drug addiction, will be exclusively on Talk Drive, telling us just the real facts and how this horror, this stain on a society, ruins people's lives. Back in 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome Welcome back. We've been talking ever since Monday's bombshell announcement by Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, about, well, so much to do with this grooming gang scandal. I call it the rape scandal, not the grooming gang scandal. We've talked to people who have raised this for years, who have been vilified as racist. We've talked about why certain communities and religions are not more vocal. We've talked about this inquiry, a screeching U-turn by a Prime Minister who said in January that anybody that jumped on this right-wing bandwagon wasn't worth their weight. We've worried, as we all do, about whether this will be a whitewash, whether it is an instrumental and institutional cover-up. I've been, just as a father, sat here thinking it's beyond the pale. It's repugnant. It is a stain. It is an absolute national disgrace. And what I wanted more than anything was to be able to put that into context. I'm delighted to be joined by my next guest, Tony Sutton. Welcome to Talk Drive. How are you, Tone?
Well, welcome, Jeremy. Yeah, I'm fine. Obviously, this is going to be very hard to talk to you about, but I owe it to the girls who's been abused and the girls that are being abused.
Yours is a story that needs sharing, and it will be difficult. It'll be difficult for you, and it'll be difficult for some people to hear. It's the story of your daughter Tessa. I did this for a long time. No hurry. I'm not interested in ad breaks. You can talk for an hour. I'll fight anybody. You take your time. You tell it in your own words, pal.
Well, it all started when Tessa went to secondary school. Tessa was a good kid. She's not from a broken family or anything like that. And she befriended everybody. She trusted everybody. I was married to a black woman, so Tessa was brought up with no racist bones in her body whatsoever. So it's not a case of anything like that. And I just split up with her mother, and she was a bit lost. And like I said, she trusted everybody. So she went to school, and it all started off fairly innocently. And it started off with her being offered and dared to have a cigarette, like it does with a lot of kids. You know, we dare you to have a cigarette, and her wanting to be part of the group and part of a gang. And the school she went with was very, very mixed. It was sort of 50-50 white, English, and you know, obviously 50% Asian. And Tessa soon latched on to some Asian lads in her class. These were the ones that were giving her the cigarettes. Now, we didn't really know much about it. And to be honest, she was a good kid, so you wouldn't have suspected it. She wasn't one of them kids where you had to keep watching her and telling her off for anything. In fact, she was the other way, to be truthful. And so it gradually went on and it moved on to vodka. And we got the same story that probably a lot of parents have had, whereby she'd said to us, "Can I stop at such a body's tonight?" And you knew the parents, and to be honest, one of the parents who were her friend was a police sergeant. So you obviously trusted your daughter to go and stop at her friends, and her friend would probably get the same. Can I go and stop at such a body's, at Tessa's house? And again, they knew us. So you trusted that that's what was happening. Anyway, it turned out the first thing we really knew that anything was going wrong is when we got a phone call in the middle of the night. Now, I'd split up with her mum by now, so I was at my house and mum was at her. And it was late on in the middle of the night. I can't remember exactly what month, but I know it was winter time and like October, November sort of time. And we got a phone call off Blackburn Royal Hospital saying that Tessa was up at the hospital, that she'd been found in a tent with a friend, drunk, with hypothermia. So we went both rushed up to the hospital, and she was there and whatever. And they said if this lady, it was a lady walking a dog who found her, said if they hadn't found her then, she'd have been dead by the morning. Anyway, so we didn't even again then read too much into it being grooming. We just thought it's kids, like, and So she eventually started self-harming, and her arms looked like a barcode. By the time she'd finished, her arms would look like she'd just been literally, through a supermarket barcoding machine. So it went from it started, like I say, quite innocently, really, with the odd cigarette and a dare to vodka. Then it moved on to other things, and eventually, well, I say eventually, very quickly, to be honest, before me and her mum really knew much was going wrong, she was actually onto Class A drugs. And she'd been weaned onto Class A drugs, in my opinion, and I'm pretty sure I'm right, but with the sole intention of getting her hooked so that she would trade herself for a fix. I'm sure this is quite common of a lot of these girls who's on the street, that they're not there by choice, they're there because something like that has happened to them. And so the problem is the problem is that by being such an addict, that when someone's after consent for sex, then that she will be giving them consent for sex in exchange for a fix. Yeah. So to me, it is still rape by anybody's way of reckoning.
It's grooming, isn't it? It's getting her to a position
but obviously by giving consent, you're in that middle ground before where the police are concerned that well, she's consented. Well, she's consented because in a way she's sort of like been blackmailed into like getting the substance in exchange for whatever. So it's not consent. Well, it is, but it isn't, if that makes a bit of sense. Anyway, so you couldn't, by this time, me and her mum couldn't do anything. She'd be sneaking out in the middle of the night. You'd have had to chain her up, because you will literally lock all the doors, go to bed. Bear in mind, we both work full time. You go to bed, and before you knew it, she'd have snuck out in the middle of the night, and you wouldn't even know that she'd been out in the middle of the night. So she got to a point where I had a go at my house trying to sort her out, and being up half of the night trying to keep a watch on her. And then when she was back at her mum's, we had the same thing there, where she was sneaking out and what have you, and meeting people and what have you. And so she was. So this went on. She'd only be about 18 probably by then. She wasn't. She was still very, very young, and eventually she was passed around like a piece of meat in exchange for sex, basically, in exchange for a substance or anything. Tessa would literally drink. I was told to take her to the hospital just before she died. I was told to take her to the hospital up at Blackburn, and I was waiting that long in A&E, even though they knew she had problems, and I told them she had problems, that she was drinking hand sanitizer. This is how bad she had got. She would literally, she was beyond anybody's thing. So I sort of like begged the social workers to send her to rehab and keep her there. Anyway, so she, like I say, she'd ended up on Class A drugs and all.
What drugs? Just for one minute, what drugs?
Well, cocaine and basically
heroin.
No, I don't think she did heroin. I think it was cocaine.
Did she go to rehab, Tony?
Did she what, sorry?
Did she go to rehab?
No, she didn't. They said she didn't want to go to rehab and she had capacity. Now, I questioned, how can somebody have capacity that slashes herself to pieces and ends up in an intensive care unit? Because it wasn't her first time in intensive care unit. She had come out of intensive care unit and been moved to a ward. I'd pre-warned the hospital not to let anybody see her other than me and her mum, because they'd be fetching her things in, not to give her her clothes, not to give her a phone, not to give her any money. And because, as I says, the first chance you do, she'll do a runner. So that's what basically she so she moved off the intensive care unit on one side of Blackburn Hospital. It has 2 intensive care units to a ward. And like I say, I pre-warned them about what would happen, and we had alternative days at going to visit. So one day, you know, I'd go, and then the next day, Mum would go. And she was as right as she was ever going to be. To be honest, she weren't right, but she walked around hospital. She'd be allowed to walk around hospital and what have you. And anyway. So it was my turn to go, and I rang up and I said, right, I'm coming, I'm going up to see Tess. And they said, don't bother. This is her boyfriend. Said, don't bother, she's here. And I said, what do you mean she's here? So she'd signed herself out and done a runner from Blackburn Hospital. So about 2 days after that, her health visitor rang me and said she's complaining of stomach problems, stomach thing. Now, bear in mind, she'd just come off intensive care with liver problems, with substance abuse and a racing heart. And so he said, if you take her up to hospital, Tony, I says, well, I'll struggle to get it there, you know. I says, but I'll try. So she says, well, if you do that, I'll ring hospital, tell them that you're coming. I says, right, fair enough. So I went to rang Tess and I sort of like badgered her into going. It took me a while to get her to agree to go. And I went and I said to the receptionist, I fetched her health visitors, told me to bring her up and all this lot, and supposed to have rung you to tell you I'm coming. She says, oh, no one's rung us. She says, so we waited in this waiting room, and the hospital, the waiting room were full. They had it empty. It took about 4 hours to empty. Tess had cleared off into the women's toilets by then, and was ages, to a point where I went to tell one of the sisters that, I says, my daughter's in that woman's toilet. I says, I can't go in. I says, but she's could be doing anything. She could be slashing her wrists or taking whatever. Anyway, it took them about half an hour to go around to see her, and I had to go and ask him again. And just as they were going to send someone in, she came out. And so we eventually got to see this doctor, and I walked into this doctor, and bear in mind she'd discharged herself about 2 days earlier, and it was like she were being punished. And I said to this doctor, I said, I brought her here, she's complaining of stomach aches and whatever, she's discharged herself from hospital. And he turned round to me as flippant as they could and said to me, well, what do you expect me to do? And it was as flippant as that. I've never heard anything from a doctor as so sort of like disgusting in my life. I'm thinking, you know, I thought, well, I couldn't actually. So straight away I tried to ring this health worker, and she told me she'd have her phone on all night if I had any problems. And it literally just went to an engage. Well, it just rang through, just kept ringing through, and it made me look absolutely stupid. So eventually this doctor says to us, go back in there and we'll do some bloods. So we went back in there and we were ages. By this time, Tessa was climbing up the wall. I'd nearly have to sit on her. Bear in mind, she's, like I say, she's massive into substance abuse by now and drinking the hand sanitizer. And so I went to the counter. I said, look, you can't keep her here much longer. I'm nearly having to sit on her to keep her here and beg her to stay. You know, we've been there about 5-6 hours by now. And so this receptionist said, well, go through them 2 doors there, Tony, and there'll be a woman with a nurse with a dark blue uniform. Just tell them. And I went through these doors, came back, and Tess had done a runner and was outside smoking a joint. So that was the end of that. I couldn't get her back in. 2 or 3 days after that, she was still complaining of stomach ache. And like I say, you know, and so her mum took her to a GP. Her GP sent her straight up to Blackburn Hospital and rang Blackburn Hospital. They put her straight on the other ICU unit and put her in an induced coma. And then every time I rung up, you know, she seemed to be like no better. She'd just come off one about 2 weeks early. So you were just expecting the same, you know, that eventually she'll come round. And then they said to me, "Oh, I rang them up when it weren't my day to go, when it was my wife's day to go," and they said, "Oh, we're reducing her sedation." And I'm thinking, "Oh, they're bringing her around because I don't know whether you know or not, they bring them around very, very slowly because they bring them around too fast. It does a lot of damage."
Absolutely.
So I'm thinking they're bringing her around very, very slowly. And she'll be, next time I go, her eyes will be open and everything, and that, you know what I mean. She might be groggy, but she'll be awake and what have it. Anyway, it were my wife's turn to go the next day. I'd gone out and actually enjoying myself because I thought, well, it's not my day. There's nothing I can do. And then I got a phone call at 4:30 saying they're turning the machines off. And I thought, well, they're turning the machines off because they don't need them anymore. No, they're turning the machines off because they give up on it. So I went up to hospital, grabbed her brother and her sister and her grandma, and my brother, my younger brother, and sorry,
You're
and
right.
Basically the consultant came in and talked to you, and it was without any compassion whatsoever. It was like he was talking about something wrong with a car. It wasn't like he was talking about a human being. And basically, I said to him, I said, well, if she's got like liver failure and all this lot, why can't you do something about it? You did it for Jimmy Greaves, you did it for George Best, you did it for all these, liver dialysis machines and all this. So, oh no, they said we can't do that, and that was basically it. So this was the 9th of November. Now, her sister's birthday is on the 12th. Sorry.
You're good.
And I said, I don't want, if you're going to do it, I don't want my daughter dying on my other daughter's birthday. And this has all come about through grooming. And all these people who think that it's not going on, or they think it's a very trivial thing and not, not so widespread, they need to get out into the real world, because I know at least 2 northern towns where it's going on.
Tony, there's many things if I can jump in, there's many things I want to ask you, and anything that you don't want to answer, that's fine.
No, sure, you carry on.
You claim that Tessa was exploited by a group of Asian boys and men. Hear me out 1 second, please. One of the big things that's come out in the last few days, and there has been a lack of willing to be able to say that certain members of those communities have been responsible. Over the years, people who have said it, Nigel Farage said it in 2014, was called a racist. We've been talking about it at this station. It now has come out that, in fact, a majority of the I call it the raping of these young white girls, has been carried out by Muslim men, British Pakistani men and illegal migrants. How do you know or believe that Tessa was? We talked about the drugs, we talked about the downward spiral. How do you know she was exploited by a group of Asian boys and men?
Because I know, because I've seen some of I've actually met some of these. Well, I've not met them. I've seen her with some of these people, and I also she had a care worker who it was like an unofficial care worker, like a shadowing sort of person that was given to her, and he was Asian, and he ended up she's ended up expecting by him.
So you've got a half Asian granddaughter?
Yeah.
Are you bringing that child up?
My son is. My son is.
And that's with the Asian volunteer support worker that your daughter, who was traumatised, had a child with?
Yeah.
What do you say to people who think that this is, how do I put this, an attack on certain communities when people are suddenly saying...
There'll be people... There will be English white blokes who do groom kids, but they tend to be loners. These are like, if you will, organised groups whereby they're that organised. They will find somebody like that and pass them around inside the group, rather than, like, if you will, your average old-fashioned groomer from when we were kids, from Charlie the cat and all that.
From a father's point of view, take a breath and talk to me, a father of 6. What, you have to be so careful when you do this, but you talked about how hopeless it was, how you couldn't keep her in. You talked about how you felt like the system had failed. You know, you weren't getting the answers, you weren't getting the support. You're trying to hold down a job and do all this stuff.
We weren't getting any support, no.
What's that like as a father, realising that your daughter's slipping away from you because she's being groomed?
I promise it's awful to try and keep it together and not actually lose it, and not how can you put yourself in a situation where you end up in prison, because your first reaction as a father is to go out and protect your daughter. I'm sure anybody who's had their daughter sexually assaulted, the first instinct, especially a bloke's instinct, is to go out and find these people and take the law into your own hands. And I don't think I'd be doing these. It's not a case of being scared of it. I'm more scared of me. And I think I'm doing more good by... Well, I hope I'm doing more good by coming on here and going onto that National Crime Agency and the like, and doing it through the proper channels. I'm hoping that we can trust these people to not just tick a few boxes and say, right, we've done that, it's over, nothing's happened, and it's not as bad as everybody said, and all the rest of it.
So whilst you are happy's the wrong word, but you're delighted that there is now going to be a national inquiry. Your daughter, a victim, your family torn apart by what you believed was grooming by a group of Asian boys and men that led a nice, successful young girl who was very trusting. Yes, her parents' marriage had broken down.
My daughter had a degree in medicine. She wasn't thick or anything. All these people, they come on, and I've heard them. I've watched everything there is on BBC, on everything there is, and they're all on about historic sex abuse, grooming gangs. Historic? It isn't historic. They all talk about in the past tense. It's been going on for years. Don't get me wrong, but it's current. It's current. It's as widespread and current.
What does it say about our society that, if it's true, Leader in the Sun on Tuesday said, this has been systematic, institutionalised cover-ups?
It is. I think it's... I honestly do. I honestly do think it's been covered up. I think a lot of people, especially MPs and such like, and social workers and one, I think they're that scared of going too far to the other side to be seen as racist, that they don't, or losing votes, or whatever the case may be, or not getting a promotion or what have you, that they have covered all this up. You know, I mean...
Do me a favour. Do me a favour. You're brilliant, mate. And I listen. What do I do? What do I know? I know that I'd be in prison if what had happened to you happened to me. And I think about what happened to that girl, and I think about men who think it's right to ply girls with drugs and have their wicked way. Disgusting, vile. Hope they get locked up. As a father, for people, just hear me out. For people who perhaps don't understand what this does. When you had to say goodbye to Tessa that day, what does that do to you? What does that do to you?
Oh, God. There's no words can describe that. It took... I was up all night, the night before. As soon as I heard, I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't mention her name or have anybody mention her name for about 6 months afterwards. I'd be like I am now. And to give up work, I couldn't work. You haven't been there till that happens. Anybody who's ever took a dog or a cat to have it put down, it's 10 times that. And I have nightmares to this day, and all I see in the middle of the night, I was up this morning, 1 o'clock in the morning, all you see is your daughter lying on that bed, surrounded by machines, keeping her alive.
Who do you blame for her death?
I blame everybody, including myself for not noticing it early enough and giving her too much freedom. I blame the schools, the social services. the NHS. I mean, I promised that woman. Well, I asked that woman and whatever. The woman who told me to take her up to the hospital that night. I told her. I said, why can't you get her in rehab? She says she won't go. She's got capacity, and I argued
should have been sectioned though, shouldn't she? She should have been sectioned.
She should have been sectioned because I was told that once I got her through that door at Blackburn Royal, that they could keep her under the Dolls Act.
They can.
And he said nothing of the sort. I can't do that. He was the most stroppy doctor I've ever come across
Probably
in my life.
He
was an absolute disgrace. I don't know his name. I wish I did.
Can I tell you something? Can I tell you something? Done this a long time. It's an honour to speak to somebody so honest, so straight. I can't even begin, as I'm sure viewers and listeners, to even understand the pain you went through. No, by the way, you're fundamentally wrong to place any blame on your shoulders. What you're highlighting is that this grooming...
You don't realise it's going on till it's too late.
Mate,
you know what I mean?
I know, but
it's all these people, they trust the daughters.
You know me, Tony. You know me. I'm straight. It's so easy. For me, one of the worst things about a crime like this is that the people whose lives are blighted, they lose family members. They spend the rest of their living years questioning, wondering, thinking, pondering, fearing that they didn't do that. This isn't on you. This is on the systems, this is on grooming, and this is why we've been talking about this for the whole of this week, and we'll continue talking about it, which is that we seemingly have accepted as a society that we can make excuses for what is the most vile, repugnant, unacceptable behaviour. And I'm so pleased that you were able to do this. I know it's difficult, I know it's hard, we're going to support your affair, but I do know one thing, mate, and I'll tell you this, done this for a long time. Wherever she is, she'd be proud of you doing this, and what you've done today is maybe stopped a few people in their tracks who have gone, well, listen, this is real.
They all think it's kids out of care. They all think it's not they're rough, these girls, and that they're sort of, I won't say deserving of it, but that's what the image that people are getting. This is happening to everybody's daughters. You know, they're not. It's not a class conscience thing. I think it's a lack of respect throughout the Pakistani community on women in general. They're all inclusive. I think if you have more, if you went back to my day and age, your mum were always at home. Your mum was always the one that gave up work and always did the washing up and the washing and looked after the kids, and your dad never had out to do. And it seems like they're like sort of like back in my day and age, 60s, where that was the case. And I think they just need to respect women a bit more. And this, they'd probably, I don't know, probably change the culture a bit.
Mate, thank you. Genuinely, thank you. I hope that it... listen, it's not cathartic for you, but I hope many people will be touched. And just before Tony goes, if you have been affected by anything with this story, because it is emotional, it is difficult, go to talk.tv/helplines, because that's really, really important. But sharing your story, Tony Sutton, has been so important, mate. We appreciate it. We're here for you. And I hope, in a little way, that helps convince people who don't believe. But I think mate, really honestly, I think there's a groundswell of opinion that ain't going anywhere in this country now, which is this is unacceptable and has to change now.
Before I've come on here, I've written to various MPs, and most of them don't even give you a reply. Lisa Nandy, Jess Phillips, Keir Starmer. Wow. I'm trying to think who else. The one that said it was whistleblowing. I can't think what she was.
Lucy Powell.
I've wrote to a lot of these, and the only one, I've wrote to Lee Anderson, and in fairness to Lee Anderson, he got back to me and he said you're outside of my constituency. I can't get involved, Tony. But the other thing is, where I live, it's all Asian run MP, Asian run social services.
Who's your MP?
I don't know.
I'm going to find out who your MP is, and I'm going to ring him. Tony,
well, I haven't got a clue, but
we'll find that out.
To me, it'd be like going to Burnham Matthews about the problem with Turkey.
What
you know what I'm saying?
What town are you in?
Blackburn.
Blackburn, yeah. South, Blackburn, North. Yeah, I know where.
Yeah.
Mate, thank you. Truly, really appreciate you sharing your story. Thank you. We'll support you off air, and as I said to everybody else, talk.tv /helpline. Tony Sutton there, whose daughter, Tessa, a model student, he said it was groomed. It started with cigarettes, it went to vodka, it went to Class A drugs. She was passed around, in his word, like a piece of meat. She was exploited by a group, in his words, of Asian boys and men in the community. The Asian volunteer support worker ended up having a baby with the person he was supposed to be helping. That child, the half-Asian granddaughter, is being brought up by Tony's son. There isn't a person, right? Hopefully. I'm not bothered about your political persuasion. If that doesn't cut to the very core of who we are, it's what I've been trying to say for 2.5 days. I don't care about your political persuasion. I don't give a damn about the colour of your skin. If that sort of behaviour, if grooming is acceptable, if anybody in any position has been part of a cover-up, they should be locked up and the key should be thrown away. This is Talk Drive.
More rapes are committed by white people, and that they will still be saying that. This inane, asinine response to what is a massive nationwide scandal. Yeah. But white people do it more. It is such a moronic chant. And yet I wrote about this at the weekend for the Sunday Times, and I could see below the line the Labour supporters saying, he hasn't done a U-turn.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
About 23 minutes to 7 o'clock. The outpouring from you after Tony Sutton's interview is understandable. I appreciate the comments, and I think, you know, the reason for doing it is that somebody like Tony is real. He's lost his daughter to people who manipulated her, changed her, groomed her, conditioned her, raped her, and then he was let down by services in this country that didn't turn a blind eye, just didn't provide what he needed. And I was sitting here thinking there were moments in that interview we'd think, well, would I have done this, would I have done that? But you're fighting a system. That is what's so fundamentally wrong. Neil says, well done, Tony, brave as hell. We need more like you, shining a light on this. Mel, I'm absolutely broken. This poor father. Tess and all the other girls deserve justice. This is a stain, Jez, on our society. Hilly from Wales, God bless that father, I'm in tears. Nick, the interview with Mr. Sutton has broken my heart. Jez, it should be compulsory viewing for the liberal left and the left-wing media who disbelieve it. Give him all my best. He's a strong man. Talk. What a brave man Tony is. I'm heartbroken. These men must be taken out of our society. Thank you for highlighting this. To the phone lines in London. Kirsten, you're on Talk Drive. Good evening.
Hey, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm all right.
I've just heard that Dad's testimony, and it just breaks my heart. You and I have spoken before. I come from Honduras. I mean, when I heard about these stories about 10 years ago when I came to this country, I told my British born and bred husband, and he didn't believe me. He thought that these things do not happen in England and the UK. And I said to him, look, it really happens. I've seen a documentary about it. And it's unbelievable that people back home would not believe that these sort of things happen in the United Kingdom. It's just, I can't.
I think it's probably the biggest national disgrace ever. I think it concerns me enormously that this could go to all levels and all parts. It worries me that this this inquiry could be a whitewash, but I'm absolutely galvanised by one thing and one thing only. I know the British people are at a critical moment and they're not going to accept BS anymore. And when people like Tony Sutton, you could understand the desperation in his voice about feeling that he was banging his head against a brick wall. I've spoken, listen, I've done this for a long time, and I've spoken to many parents who have tried so hard and have been failed and then spend the rest of their lives feeling like they haven't done enough. He did everything that any sane person can do. We can sit here and go, oh, what about this, what about that? I think he highlights what so many people think, which is it's about time as a society that we were truthful and honest about the level, the depravity and the level of some of these people. I have to move on. Kirsten, though, thank you so much indeed. Quickly to Croydon. Peter, couple of minutes on Talk Drive. What you got, pal?
Hello, Jeremy. Yeah, that MP, he's called Adnan Hussein. I'm gonna email him. I know he's not. I know that he won't take because I'm not his constituent. But I mean, I've emailed Starmer.
Who's the name? So just slow down. Who's the name of the MP?
Adnan Hussein.
Oh, he's the pro-Gazan MP who stood about... Now I'm going to have my little rant and probably be pulled off the radio. Yeah, this is the man... No, well, let me say this. This is the man who didn't talk about anything in Blackburn that was affecting his community, like Tony Sutton's daughter being groomed and ending her life through liver failure because drug addiction she was groomed into. This is a man who's still on a pro-Gaza ticket. I'm not going to have an argument about Gaza, but I thought MPs were supposed to be elected to do their bit for their constituents, and he can't get through to him. What a disgrace that MP is. What a disgrace.
Absolutely. He's an independent.
Yeah, of course.
Now I'm not a father, Jeremy, but I did work with kids, and I'm just thinking when I was at those after school clubs talking to 8, 9, 10-year-olds and thinking, how can Starmer, he's got a daughter.
Yep.
What is wrong with these people, Jeremy?
I must make the point, and I've made it all week, and I hope I've made it okay. I don't blame just Keir Starmer. I'll get to him in a sec. I blame every single institution, every single organisation, every single politician, local police officer, police constable, police superintendent, social services, the NHS, everybody, if they are complicit, in my mind, in public office, trial, jail. The concern is, right, is that our Prime Minister is so lacking in any political nous that not 6 months ago did he stand up and say, anybody jumping, it's a far-right bandwagon. No, you imbecile. Go upstairs at 10 Downing Street, have a look at your 14-year-old daughter, go back 6 years and imagine a man, forget the colour of that man's skin, because that's what you're worried about, isn't it, Starmer? Imagine a man raping your daughter and then tell me, you idiot, that you wouldn't feel how Tony Sutton feels. Peter in Croydon, thank you. This is Talk Drive.
My last two Prime Minister's questions, I've said to Keir Starmer, will you declare a national security emergency in the Channel? And he absolutely refuses to do it. And I think they were in big trouble over this. Big
massive trouble. And that's why I suspect that they're going to try and fudge this whole Casey report.
So do I.
And the investigation.
So do I.
But I don't think the public are going to let them get away with it, because that's, again, the sense that I'm hearing. People are really angry about this. You know, this is almost the final straw.
Well, the thing is, it isn't just the Labour government that's in trouble. Our country's in trouble.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Hello to Deb. Jez, fantastic interview with Tony. Sat here in tears after listening to him. What a brave man. Those who think this isn't a problem need to sit and watch that. Thank you. Deb's in Rochdale. She'd know. Jez, incredibly emotional interview with that poor man. Here's the MPs in Blackburn's details. Good luck, Nicola from Norfolk. We say a very good afternoon. How poignant as well. I've told people who listen to Drive Time there's only one lefty I allow, because the man speaks more sense than anybody I know. Matthew Torbett, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jeff.
You... A week ago, 2 weeks ago, sat in that chair and said to me, when we talked about the pensioners' U-turn and we talked about so much, you just said they don't get ahead of the game, they call it wrong, it's U-turn after U-turn. I fervently believe you said that Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer will not be long for this life. I think that I mean, we've talked about nothing more than the grooming gang scandal since Monday, because that's what the listeners have wanted to respond to. I think it's the biggest national disgrace. I think it stains us. I think it embarrasses us. I think if it goes as deep and as high as people fear, I hope to God politicians don't think a whitewash is good enough, because I don't think the British people will stomach it. But I want to start by asking you something else. How did a man become Prime Minister who doesn't even have, forget political nous, the normal intelligence to go, geez, that is repugnant? Because now every single person, and maybe you can say on the right, but I suspect across this country is going to go, what, you traded the Muslim vote for the Labour Party, and what was it somebody said to me yesterday? You traded 8-year-old white girls and their long-term security on the altar of the ideology of multiculturalism. I think that's a fantastic phrase. I really do.
I think it's... Keir Starmer's always shown he's got sort of quite poor political judgment. If you're just going to look purely at the politics of this, I think to come straight in as an MP and demand a second referendum and totally not realising the state of the country and the fact that if you were to ignore 17.5 million people, that's just going to go absolutely fine, you know, and whatever else. The only thing I ever seem to remember him calling right and going, oh, that was quite clever, is I think during COVID he said, oh, we should have a, what was it called? He wanted a break or something, and I said, oh, he's got ahead of the government. And I was genuinely surprised. I thought, that's quite clever politics, well done. I think since then, sort of Premiership onwards has shown that his judgment is bad, and I think 6 months ago when this all came about again, because in a way really because of Elon Musk, because it's all well and good, you know, what the thing that's knocked me a bit sick is both sides going, yeah, but we're now doing the inquiry, what did you do?
I'm not sticking up for the Tories, by the way, in any which way.
I know you're not, but this is the
appalling,
problem.
all of them.
The idea that some of these people care about working class white girls and ever have is everybody had forgotten about it. Everybody had left it until very, very recently. And for whatever reason Elon Musk has done it or who's fed it him, regardless, that it's turned out hopefully to be a good thing. I think the problem with a national inquiry is the fact that you can have about 800 cold cases and it's going to be very hard to get justice for some of these people. That's the sad thing, because...
Do you think heads will roll? Do you think it'll be a whitewash? Because I don't think the British people will stomach it.
Well, no, they'll have to.
The Prime Minister's what, going to pick who runs it?
I don't know how he's going to... I think they're still figuring out the framework, and I don't think that's because it's going to be... I do think it isn't going to be somewhat of a whitewash. I think out of everybody, and Maggie Oliver said the same when I saw her on Monday.
She was on the show.
Baroness Casey, she met with Baroness Casey twice earlier in the year, she said, and she had no faith in any government, doesn't matter, you know, Labour, Tory, whatever, that anybody was going to ever do anything, and Baroness Casey impressed her. And having met Baroness Casey a few times, she's a force of nature that won't take any prisoners, and has been quite explicit about that.
Did you not find it most frightening about Baroness Casey? We were talking about this earlier. She said, I don't know where people have been. I didn't even barely scratch the surface, rather than dig with my nails, and I found stuff that's completely repugnant and repellent. You're a northern lad. I spent 15 years up there. People have talked about this for a long time. You haven't got kids, but we talk about your dad, relevant. We talk about the northern way of being. For me to listen to Yvette Cooper admit that the majority, and I'm quoting her, I'm being racist, of perpetrators were British Pakistani men or Muslims, and also a high proportion were illegal migrants, makes every single lefty who's called stations like this, not you, people like me and Mike Graham, say, you're racist. No. This is now proven. That, to me, that's the good thing that comes out of this. It's not, it's factual. Baroness Casey was saying people were Tipexing out the word Pakistani.
Yeah, I saw.
I mean, God, man.
I think part of that is, and I don't know if I've said this to you before, those of us on the left have to get a lot better at having uncomfortable conversations. And I think the problem is, because this becomes a political debate, if one side says one thing...
I want a moral debate. I don't want a political debate. I want a moral debate about how I think that is so vile and heinous that's no place in a society I want to live in. That's the debate I want to have.
Totally. And I think whether it's because of bad faith spokespeople on either side, that the other side then goes, well, we can't be seen to be aligning with them, like, even if it may be true, because people feel very uncomfortable about it. And it's sometimes in life things are uncomfortable, and if the truth is uncomfortable, that's the truth.
Do you think it's the death knell for multiculturalism? Do you think the political parties who believe that if you have, in creating a society where everybody's supposed to get on, that this proves that doesn't work once and for all?
I don't think so, because I know Muslim people who are just as disgusted as me and you are.
Right, so here's my question. You know what I'm going to say, don't you? I've heard from people, migrants who have come to this country. I've mentioned 3 people that I know that have come here and worked their backsides off and given so much. They're more appalled than I am. Why no voices from the Muslim community? Why no voices from the British Pakistani community? Haven't heard a word. Surely, if they find it as repugnant as the rest of us, why are they not being vocal about it?
Maybe they are. I don't know if the media goes and speaks to them necessarily. That's the problem. Maybe they won't speak. On the other side, we have it in all religions. If it's a religious thing, look at Justin Welby. Look at the amount that went on under it. And in fact, he left it to
I'm with you.
And so this is the thing. Even if you do hear from him, sometimes they're not repentant. He resigned and then totally went, well, if it is my fault, then sorry, sort of thing. And it's
Catholic Church, just completely with you, mate. Not,
so
and that's why it's not purely. That's why all week I've stressed. For me, it's not about the colour of your skin or your religion. This is so heinous to me as a father. I've said it. Ryan keeps looking at me, bless him, not now. I've been saying it for 3 days. I'd be in prison if somebody had done that to my daughter, and Tony Sutton is a wonderful human being. I would be in prison, and I make no apologies for that. I'd be serving life. That's it.
Yeah, it's
that's it.
I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I would do.
Well, right, take this from an old man, not being disrespectful. You'll have a kid one day, I'm sure. You'll have a daughter. I know exactly what you do when you hold that daughter in your arms for the first time. And as a society, irrespective of your political persuasion, if we have allowed people to come into this country or allowed people to partake in that whilst excusing it because apparently it's part of a different whatever debate, not good enough.
No, and I don't know if it goes potentially deeper, because all these things happened up north.
Yeah.
With the exception of probably Peterborough and Oxford. Didn't happen in London, which is one of the the most diverse places in the country.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder, why? Is this because there are certain towns, I don't want to pick on them, but you look at places like Blackburn and Burnley, that have been done in for years economically, and if there was a culture of we can do what we want, we can get away with what we want, because it's a bit like bandit country. And the other thing with this is, which I think Baroness Casey hinted at yesterday in her evidence, this is men. It's always men. And this is not to say it doesn't happen to women. Don't also do awful things. I think the number of men that face sort of domestic violence and stuff is in the tens of thousands. It's a serious issue, but this is a male issue, and not to sort of gloss over it.
Which makes it even worse, and I've got to go to an ad break, which makes it even worse for me when I was watching Yvette Cooper deliver her speech. Literally, the posturing of the Labour Party. They put all the females on the front row. Did you see it? Yeah, Angela Rayner, that revolting human being who said that this was dog whistle politics, Lucy Powell. Then we've got Phillipson, who dreams of being the Queen, and one other. They looked like they were chewing glass. And Jess Phillips, and I'm sitting there thinking, for your reason, right? They're supposed to be, all of these people, and I would support them, protecting women's rights, and yet it would be absolutely fair to say in the last 2 months on this show, when it comes to the transgender argument, they seem to all back a man with a... I'm being completely honest, right? What about the 15-year-olds that walk into a change room and a man with a penis is changing? And I say that as a father. Oh, no, you're not being respectful to transgender. Where's the Jess Phillips in this world screaming from the rooftops to Keir Starmer in January? You're allowing girls to be raped. You are trading it for votes. Whatever you're doing, we need a national inquiry. You can have your job and shove it up your backside. That's what really, really gets my gut.
But that's where you started the conversation, because Jess Phillips held on to her constituency by about 700 votes and was challenged by someone representing the pro-Gaza fringe of politics, and look at the makeup of her constituency.
So you're telling me she traded, and I'm being completely serious, she sacrificed the right and wrongs of what's happening to girls to keep her seat?
I'm not willing to libel myself. What I would say is, I imagine those conversations would be very uncomfortable in Birmingham.
I love you, Talbot, you're great. Are you away from the Labour Party? It's a horrible thing for Britain, isn't it?
I find it hard. I get upset about it, because I feel like they've taken the party I joined and totally trashed it. This is not there's a whole manner of things going on where you think, I didn't come down here full of beans and energy to join a party that was going to put 700,000 people into poverty because of welfare cuts. I didn't come down here to take money off pensioners and let them potentially freeze at winter and to ignore people. I came down here to change things and hopefully, shape society for the better. And it hasn't turned out that way at the minute. I think there's some good stuff done with regards to the workers' rights. Potentially the nationalisation of the railways, but I think you haven't got the stock. Essentially, it's a bit of a short-term fix. I'm not away. I'm a paid-up member of the Labour Party, but as I say to people at the minute, by about the skin of my teeth. That's the problem. I despair, and I've always considered myself an independent person, independent thinker, and I don't know. I don't know what the future looks like.
And you know what's great to finish this week with you is that I've sat here and a bit like you, I always naively thought you can find an answer. There'll be an answer. I woke up on Tuesday morning and I said to my wife, I'm quite embarrassed. Different lady, I was proud to be British. There isn't a racist bone in my body. There isn't. You can ask the people that know me. But if we cannot be honest and truthful about what is going on in this country, and we haven't, if we have no faith, the lead in the Sun with Jack on Tuesday morning was, we've been lied by the state, we've been lied to by the state. If that is true, and this can go as high and as low as you want, from a moral point of view as a dad, I want to say to every police officer, social worker, NHS worker, politician, local council, whatever, but you can sleep at night, can you? You can sleep at night to think that a working class girl, a white working class girl, somebody from a broken home, somebody with a disability, a learning difficulty, whatever, has been plied with drugs and raped, and for whatever reason, you ain't given your all to make sure that people realise that's wrong. Unbelievable.
Do you know what it is though as well? If they were from Kensington and Chelsea, it'd be dealt with. This always comes back to the class of people. You did this stuff for 15 years and dealt with people that were ignored and whatever else. You always feel
all the
ignored.
critics, I've only got a minute up, all the critics of the Jeremy Carr show had one thing to say to them. Where do you think these people would have gone? The thousands of people I put into detox and rehab, because those people don't watch or listen to television anymore. They disappeared, right? So all the people who went, oh yeah, but you're taking... No. He gave these people a voice. And those girls did not have a voice. And I believe that all politicians of all parties and all people in institutions have failed those girls. And I don't know where we go from here. I hope to God it ain't a whitewash though, mate, because I don't think the people will stomach that, do you?
No, people will be able to tell. But it's sad, I met some survivors on Monday and they said, we haven't got any faith. Even with a national inquiry, they had no faith because they've been beaten down by essentially establishment that has closed ranks, protected itself, potentially taken part in cover-ups and looked after one another. And therefore, that you feel that when you're on your own as an individual, I know the survivors have got together in places, but there's that sense